Bryce Harper, sac fly, and the Phillies are on top by 2, 5-3.
I feel really good about this group and the direction where we're headed. We're struggling to score runs at the moment, but you start getting a couple of these guys clicking offensively, and the fight that they've shown, I think we're in a good spot.
All right, things aren't going super well for the Cardinals offense. Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. You got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. That's what it sounded like last night on the Phillies TV network. Alex, the Cardinals aren't doing a whole lot offensively right now, and it's kind of been the case since the very beginning of the season. As a team, your St. Louis Cardinals are batting .215. Not ideal. They have a slugging percentage, which would be a really nice on-base percentage right now. They are slugging .340 on the year. If you want to get super nerdy with it, some people prefer the OPS plus stuff, the WRC plus stuff. It's all on a scale of 100. 100 is exactly league average, Alex. The Cardinals are at 80, which means they're 20% below league average, again, as a team offensively so far this year. Let me read you some notables, notable players on how they've been performing, all right? Nolan Gorman has a 42% strikeout rate, which means 2 out of every 5 times that he walks up to the plate, he's going to end that plate appearance in a strikeout. No, by the way, he has an OPS of 650.
T-Bone 3 is looking real good right now.
Nolan Arenado has yet to walk to the plate and take a walk. Not once. Not once this season has he walked after going up to the plate. He has a 610 OPS. Paul Goldschmidt has 1 extra base hit on the season thus far. He has his OPS below 600. Jordan Walker has hit exactly 1 line drive. No, not 1 line drive that dropped for a hit. He has a line drive on the season thus far in terms of a batted ball. He has an OPS of 530.
Tell us about the runners in scoring position.
Victor Scott has an OPS of 290. It's not great. What'd you expect? Alec Burleson once again is one of the most unlucky hitters in Major League Baseball.
Here we go.
He has an OPS of 450. His expected batting average on the year is 280. I can't explain it at this point.
I want to see results.
It's Matt Carpenter 2.0.
Oh,
what do you want from me?
Scratch and claw.
Now, Alex said he wants to know about the runners in scoring position numbers. Those aren't great either. In their losses so far this year, the Cardinals are 7 for 38 with runners in scoring position, including a 2 for 12 appearance last night. They are averaging just 2.2 runs per game in their losses on the season.
Say it with me, T-Bone. Cardinals! Cardinals!
I can't.
All right.
I think
there's
suck.
all the information that is available to you. And
Well,
yet,
we do.
And yet, the Cardinals are 5-6. Their defense is vastly improved. Their pitching, although the numbers don't look great, if you're being totally honest with you, I can't really pull out, like, there's no cherry picking good numbers for this pitching staff. It hasn't been great by the numbers, but I think a lot of that is based on, like, a couple of blow-ups. Overall, when you're watching the game, the pitching feels like it's better. It feels significantly improved from a year ago. And so, my question to you today, I think there's 2 sides to this coin. Alex, T-Bone, text line at 314-399-9646. Are you more optimistic about the Cardinals because their pitching appears to be giving them a real chance to win on a consistent basis this year, and the offense will eventually come together? Or are you more pessimistic because the offense isn't coming through, the pitching has been wasted early on this season, and you're not believing that it's going to sustain? You think the numbers are telling the story, not how it feels when you're watching the game, and that this is going to be just another repeat of last year where we're always waiting for more from the offense. Alex, do you find yourself on the optimistic or the pessimistic route for the 2024 St. Louis Cardinals through 11 games?
Well, you know what the topic is, and you know what side of this I'm going to fall on. It's the pessimism side. This glass is half empty with this offense. In all reality, yeah, I'm very concerned about the offense. I feel like I'm kind of flipped with this, though. Like, I'm optimistic because the offense can't be that bad, right? Famous last words. You know that's going to get better. And I'm actually pretty pessimistic about the pitching because we can sit here and be like, oh, look how good they look the first turn through the rotation. Guys, screaming red lights going off every time I watch Michaelis, Lynn, and Gibson be like, this can't sustain all season long. This can't sustain all season long. But I would say I'm more pessimistic about the offense.
Shocking.
This is exactly what the Cardinals did last year. Remember when you got mad at me when I'm like, they're inconsistent? You're like, what are you talking about? They're not inconsistent. They're here and then here and then here. They're this. One game you get 8 runs, and the Cardinals are back. The Cardinals are coming. And then the next game, you go out against Turnbull, and you get 0.
Yeah, that wasn't
He
great.
looked pretty good, though.
Yeah, when have I heard this before? A young pitcher on another team that you haven't seen before. Oh, he looked really good against the Cardinals.
He's definitely given up 8 and 3 innings in his next start. But he looked good last night, okay?
Yeah, he had his
not
best
even young.
stuff.
Yeah, he's kind of old. Yeah, he hit free agency.
Goes to show you, I don't know either.
He was a good prospect for the Tigers, and it just never
then they were
really
like,
clicked,
ugh.
and there was some injury stuff. And
Hey, he threw a no-hitter once.
yeah.
More than the Cardinals can say.
Yeah.
Michaelis got close, and then Harrison Bader couldn't make a catch.
Unbelievable, that guy. I would say I'm more pessimistic about the offense because like you said, there's no good number to look at for the pitching. You know, the rotation, it's done its job. It's 8 innings, but sometimes that includes where you give up 6 in the first. The bullpen, even though I do like this bullpen, there continue to be blow-ups, and last night was one of them where Gio can't keep the game close, and it gets away, and I thought that would be the nail in the coffin for him. And look, to their credit, they did scratch and claw and come back, but then Helsley had the blow-up inning, and he gives up 2, which you can't give up in that spot. So I would say I'm more pessimistic about the offense because the pitching, though it does feel better right now, even though the numbers don't really back that up, this should be the time where this offense should be taking advantage, where they should be performing well up to par. And then you would feel really good about this team as a whole. But because they're not hitting, it makes me go, okay, I don't know if this pitching is going to sustain all year long. And the other reason that I'm concerned is I'm just going to point out, the 2 corners are getting older and might be on the other end of the aging curve. Arenado does not look good. Again, by the way, year 3 of 4 that he hasn't been necessarily great for St. Louis. And Goldschmidt, we didn't talk about it a lot, but at the end of that MVP season, he almost lost the MVP because his power diminished. Last year, the lowest slugging percentage of his career. And now he looks lost at the plate. And I remember it in spring training, and I played it off at the time of, hey, they're down in Florida. That ballpark is windy. Maybe that's what's dampening the power. Their power, to your point, is like an on-base percentage right now. So I'm very pessimistic about this offense right now and the way it's performing. And a lot of it is some of the same issues with runners in scoring position as it was a year ago.
I think most of the animosity right now is toward Arenado.
Yeah.
That's where I'm seeing the vast majority of frustration for Cardinals fans.
I don't know how. Well, I know
Which
how
is
you.
wild
I know you felt confident yesterday, but coming into that at bat in the 10th inning last night, I thought, oh boy,
Zero
he's not.
chance.
He's not going to get a hit.
Yeah, I can
he just
understand
lost
that.
the game.
But people being frustrated with Arenado, the dude has been on base every single time. He's gotten a hit every single game this season.
Yeah, but it feels a lot like what Jordan Walker's hitting streak was last year. Where yeah, technically
They're sending
he's-
Arenado down to
give it time, man.
Get the ball up.
Give it time.
Wow. Can you do that?
No.
His hits are not impactful.
No.
It's single, 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 single. Okay, there's a double. Single, single,
And
single,
even
single.
the doubles aren't hit hard.
No, it's just down. I did feel like last night maybe that was a classic Arenado has figured it out moment where he had that double. It's down the line. That looked like a Nolan Arenado double that you'd expect. It's a pull side, dead pull hitter. That felt more like what we were used to with him. But even after that, man, the at-bat started to go back. It looks like he's half swinging right now. I don't know what's going on there. And we know this with Arenado. He goes through these weird slumps where he's tinkering, then boom, something clicks and he goes on a tear. The same thing is true for Nolan Gorman. We just got to get out front with this. Man, Nolan Gorman is going to go through massive slumps where there will be a long period of time where you say to yourself, he is lost at the plate. Yes, that's who he is. And if we're not okay with that, that's fine. We can have that conversation, but that's who he is as a player, man. This is a dude that is going to be very similar to Kyle Schwarber, where he finishes the season with a 230, 240 batting average, and there will be months where he bats 180, and he strikes out 45% of the time. But at the end of the year, you look at the back of the baseball card and say to yourself, oh, hot damn, 37 home runs, pretty good. Feel good about that. OPS right around 800. All right, pretty good. He's probably a 6-hole hitter. That's probably where he profiles best in his career. He's probably not a 3-hole hitter because there's just going to be way too many opportunities with runners in scoring position in that spot where you say to yourself he has no chance and he's not even going to move the run over. He's going to strike out in this spot. That's what happened last night. Just too many of those situations. But I feel like his profile, we're just going through the slump right now. Goldie and Arenado, man, I don't know. I don't know what's going on with these guys. And so that's what I wanted to ask you as a follow-up. Who do you feel best about? Those 3 guys in the middle of your order, Goldie, Arenado, and Gorman. Who do you feel best about breaking through this slump, and who are you most concerned about right now, Alex?
man, I don't know if I feel best about one guy breaking out of this in those three guys. Like, if I had to pick, I guess it would be Gorman. But I think at the end of the season, there are people going to be complaining that, well, he didn't put up the 30, 35 home runs we all expected, and he was way too inconsistent. I guess if I had to pick one to get out of this that I'd be confident in, it would be Paul Goldschmidt, because we've seen it to where he starts off slow and then he heats up when the season gets into the middle of it, and then he falls off down the stretch. I'd say Arenado as well, but this is back-to-back seasons where it has not looked good for him, and that is a rare occurrence with Nolan Arenado, it seems, at least in his early years here with the St. Louis Cardinals. So if I had to pick one I'd be confident in, it would be Goldschmidt, and I think the one that I'd be most lack confidence in would be Arenado.
Yeah, I think for me, the one that I would be most confident in is Goldie, just because we have seen him struggle in the past. Though I do think it is worth keeping an eye on his power. I do have some serious concerns about that. But even last year, like I mentioned, lowest slugging percentage career, had an OPS over 800. So, like, I think he's going to ultimately be fine. I would put Gorman at 2 right now. I think you're spot on. I think Gorman is going to have not just months, but seasons that are Schwarber-esque, to where it is he could hit 210 in 1 year and hit 260 the next. I think that's going to be Nolan Gorman's profile. The one that I'm most concerned about is Arenado, because to Alex's point, it looks a lot like the same as last year. And last year was very disappointing for Arenado, being not even 10% above league average. I think he was 9% above league average last year. And he just looks lost. The timing looks off. Those uncomfortable half swings were what we saw a lot of last year. Now, the good news for Arenado is at least this time it's not impacting the defense. He looks healthy. But my concern is he looks healthy and looks this lost.
He hasn't barreled up a single baseball this year. Not a single one. 0 barrels. We're 11 games into the year, man. Like, I understand. I try not to overreact to early season stuff. I know people in the text line, you'll start immediately coming in and saying, BK, you're the classic overreactor. Maybe, but I try not to do it with baseball because it is such a long season. And there are a lot of guys that are on this club in particular that have long track records of showing they will eventually get this back on track. But when it happened with Waino at the end of a season and then it crept into the following year, I was told, BK, this is different. This is a different injury. It's going to be fine. No, sometimes the stuff you see at the end of the year prior, it does carry over into the next season. And what we're watching right now with Nolan Arenado looks a lot like the guy that we saw last year. So he's the one that I'm most concerned about. The guy that I'm least concerned about is Gorman, because I just feel like we know exactly who he is. He's still in the prime of his career, and he's going to go through these valleys where it looks really ugly, and we just got to be okay with that. But Arenado, it looks ugly, and there's not really an explanation as to why he's swinging the way he is right now. Like, I'm no pro. I can tell his swing is off. And if I can see that, then I know damn well he knows it, the hitting coaches know it, and they're trying to work with it. And it doesn't look a whole lot different today than it did 2 weeks ago. So he's the one that I'm most concerned about. I do, classic BK, I do still have confidence this offense is going to be really good. But in order to get there, they need Arenado to get back on track. They need Paul Goldschmidt to get back on track. And until that happens, yeah, this team's going to stick right around the 500 mark. And if you get too far into the season, batting around there and things get ugly and the mood starts to turn in the clubhouse, we saw how that goes a year ago. And oh, by the way, coming up, you got Wheeler, you got Nola, you got Fott, you got Gallen. Pitching ain't going to make this a whole lot easier. That was the game you were supposed to be able to take advantage of when it came to the pitching on the other side.
It feels wild to say, because when those two guys were traded to St. Louis, it felt like they were the ones that pick up the slack when everybody else is struggling. After last year and the start of this year, it feels really like those two guys rely on somebody else to pick up the slack, and they're just complementary pieces. Feels an awful lot like they need Gorman or Walker or Donovan or Contreras to be the one that puts the team on their shoulders, and they'll just contribute as it goes through. And I don't think that's a good recipe for success when two guys that are supposed to be the leaders on this team, two guys that are supposed to be the pivotal pieces for your offense, are relying on other players to pick the team up when they're struggling.
He's Alex, that's T-Bone, I'm BK. If you guys want to get involved in the show, the Air Comfort Service text line is 314-399-9646. You can always get involved as well over on YouTube at youtube.com/101 ESPN STL. That is where the Graveyard Chat is off and running today. We will be joined by Jeremy Rutherford, the Blues insider for The Athletic, coming up at 11:30. Lots to get into as we go along today. Coming up at 12 in the 12 o'clock hour, I actually do want to hear from some of you guys via the mic drop feature today. I was shocked by the crowd last night. It's a great team coming in with a lot of star power in the Phillies. I understand it's not a marquee matchup when you look at the starting pitching, but that was if you just compared it to last season, it would have been the third smallest attendance at a Cardinals game in the 2023 season. And this was a season in which the Cardinals lost more than 90 games for the first time in almost 20 years. So last night, there was almost nobody out there to go to the ballpark. Tickets were as low as $1 on some of the secondary ticket markets. Tonight, you can get in for like $15, and you can sit low. And it's Sonny Gray against Zach Wheeler, man.
It's going to rain tonight, though.
Late, like super late, I think.
I might be stuck there because the Cardinals are going to go in extras because they
Yesterday, I
can't
could
close it
have
out.
listened to the argument that, hey, it's the eclipse, and as we saw with the pictures from 55 and Alex having to take 2 hours to get home yesterday, there was a real thing that people were doing other than going to a Cardinals game. I get it. If it looks similar tonight and tomorrow, I think that it is officially a storyline, so I want to hear from you guys. We'll get to it coming up at 12 o'clock via the mic drop feature on the 101 ESPN app. Are you guys just out? Just don't want to go to the games anymore? Like you found other things to do other than going down to the ballpark until they convince you that this is going to be different this year? I genuinely want to hear from some of our listeners on that. We'll get into it coming up at 12 o'clock. But coming up next, last night was the national championship, and it went almost exactly as I predicted that it would. UConn, one of the most dominant teams we've ever seen in an NCAA tournament. We'll talk about it next year on 101 ESPN.
What an amazing run. It is a UConn coronation. The Huskies make history. Back-to-back national champions. Utter domination for 2 years. 6th national crown for the UConn Huskies. Dan Hurley will enter a pantheon of coaches. That is a select group.
That's what it sounded like last night on Turner Sports alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK. Connecticut just absolutely destroyed Purdue. Never a shot. At halftime, you could convince yourself Purdue was kind of in that game. Nah, man, they weren't. That was a game that was over the moment that they took the court. UConn was just better in every possible way. Better guard play. Their big man was better than the big man that everybody talks about from Purdue. Like, everything that UConn did, they did at a higher level than Purdue. Now, Purdue did have the best dunk in the game, so I'll give them credit for that. But other than that, not a whole lot going on there. Alex, what was your biggest takeaway from an absolutely dominant run in the NCAA tournament by UConn? They outscored their opponents in last year's tournament by 20 points per game. They outscored their opponent in this year's tournament by 23 points per game. Somehow more dominant than one of the most dominant runs we've ever seen.
Yeah, my takeaway was I have not seen as dominant of a team as UConn in a very long time. Like, 0 teams had a chance in this bracket. And every time I put these brackets together, you always look at it and be like, yeah, somebody's going to upset. You're going to find it here. UConn, it would very simple for people to go from top to bottom in the championship game because UConn was so built. I mean, they could go any style you wanted to play against them. Tough underneath, shooting, fast, slow, whatever they wanted to do. They had the depth. We've talked about how they have different ways to win basketball games. I mean, again, as we've seen multiple times with UConn, it felt like they were playing with their food in the game to where it started off, you're like, yeah, Purdue's in this a little bit, and then they'd run away, and Purdue would come back, and then by the time they came out of halftime, you're thinking, oh, this is over. And that's what UConn does. So I can't tell you the last time we've seen somebody this dominant for this long of a stretch in college hoops.
They only had 2 guys that remained from last year's starting 5 and this year's starting 5.
Well, and that's the thing.
Crazy.
I feel like I can't name one person on UConn. Like when the tournament started, I couldn't name one person on UConn that I remembered.
And even today, I would say a casual basketball fan was not familiar with really any individual players on that team. Yeah. They looked at it and they were like, oh, all the numbers suggest that UConn's really good. All the experts are telling me that UConn's really good. So I'm going to pick UConn because I saw them win it last year as well. This is the rare situation. Like when Florida won back-to-back titles back in 07, 08, they had stars and guys that were real NBA players that decided to come back for the next year because they wanted to do the back-to-back thing. That's not what this was, man. This was a dominant team in 2023, and then almost entirely a new dominant team in 2024. Hurley has put himself in a level, the likes of which is unbelievably rare. Because this was a hell of a coaching job, man. They played excellent defense, and on offense, whoever your favorite college basketball team is, whether it's SLU and you just got a new coach, I think they absolutely nailed this hire, by the way. Couldn't have done any better. He's got a really fun offense that you'll be able to watch. But whoever your team is that you watch, if you watch UConn and you say to yourself, I don't recognize any of those actions, none of what they do I see from my team, your coach has some questions that he should be answering. Every coach in college basketball should be studying what UConn did to be able to get to this point because everybody's chasing them, man. And it's not going to be easy to catch them. After the game yesterday, Hurley came out and said, we're going for a three-peat. For a lot of guys, I would have laughed when they said that. For him and for this team and this organization, essentially, man, they could do it. It's not out of the realm of the possible.
Yeah, they are a juggernaut now in college basketball, and it's incredible to watch. And I think my favorite part about watching him, and I think it goes to your point on him as a coach, and honestly, I think it speaks to the basketball IQ of the guys that were on the floor, is we talked about, they would play with their food in the first half. No, I think they were learning in the first half. They were kind of a learning process. Okay, we know we're the better team. Let's see what we've got. Look back on that Illinois game, and they were up 5 at the half, and he thought Illinois make a game out of it.
Can I ask a follow-up question on that?
About Illinois? No.
Do you feel better about that loss now?
No, because I still don't think they were that bad compared to what UConn is.
I mean, everybody else was, including Purdue.
We're better than.
By the way,
everybody
I've
else.
also learned that NC State wasn't very good.
Yeah, they were a fraud.
I was like, oh, NC State, the fun story. No, actually, Purdue just wasn't good.
But
I think Purdue was really good. I think that's actually selling short how excellent this UConn team is. Like, Purdue kept this game as close as anybody has. Alabama was the only one that really gave them a run for their money, and even that game ended up with a multi-score margin. Like, I think this was just a team that was never going to be defeated in the NCAA tournament, and that included by your Illini. Yeah, it really got away from them at the end, but I said it then, I believe it today. If Illinois was on a different bracket, I think, like, if Illinois was on the Purdue side of the bracket, Illinois could have beat Purdue. I'm not sure they definitely would have done it, but they could have. They would have had a real shot to be able to do so. They got put in the worst bracket possible to be able to make a deep run. And we knew that from the moment that they got the draw.
Mizzou was in the tournament. They could have beat UConn.
They couldn't beat anybody this year.
Literally anybody.
But no, to my point on UConn, the way that they play, the fact that they can just sit there and kind of absorb in the first half just the knowledge of how are we going to beat this team, and then figure it out in the second half is one of the most impressive things that I've seen from a basketball team. Yeah, that was the most dominant run that I can remember in my lifetime. Like, I don't remember that Florida team at all.
Yep.
But this was the most dominant tournament run that I've seen, and it's so impressive the way that they run, the offense, how good they are defensively. I think you're right. I think Klingon is by far the better big man than Zach Edey. Klingon looks like he could play at the NBA level at some point if he continues to mature at UConn. You can't say that about Zach Edey. He's just the way he plays isn't a style that's going to play well in the NBA. So the way that they run, and I think you're right, nobody was going to beat them. And again, the more reason I'm upset about the Illini loss is the fact that it was 25 and it wasn't even competitive. Yeah. Look, they play that game 100 times. Illinois probably wins once. I also think they play the game 100 times. Once do they get killed by 25, and that would be my reason that I'm still a little upset about it.
All right, last
Thanks
thing
for
here.
opening up old wounds. By
Felt good.
So there was a graphic that came out last night on the updated Blue Bloods in college basketball. It included Duke, UConn, KU, Kentucky, North Carolina, and UCLA. Those 6 teams. Duke, North Carolina from the ACC, and then UConn, Kansas, Kentucky, UCLA. Do you guys agree that as of today, those are your blue blood basketball programs? Is there anybody else that you would either take off or replace?
Can Kentucky be in it without Coach C?
Yes.
Yeah, I'd say they can be.
I would have them on at least.
I think that's probably the only 6 that I would go with.
I think I want to wait to see who they hire first.
I think
But
that's fair.
if you are in need of a coach, you're not a blue blood program. If you are reliant on your coaching hires, I think that means you're probably not a legit blue blood program.
Well, I think we'll find that out once they hire the coach.
Because UConn made it work regardless of who the coach is. Duke can make it work even when they've got a coach that I bet you 50% of our audience right now couldn't name who coaches Duke basketball anymore after Coach K left. And they hired his assistant, a guy that formerly played there. So that's where I would stand on them if we think that that's the case. I don't think they belong on this list. I personally do not think that's the case. I think Kentucky basketball will be relevant regardless because of that, because of their status. Like Gonzaga, the reason why I don't think they're on this list, because Gonzaga is they have the success of a blue blood program.
Yeah.
It's because it's all reliant on one coach. If Hugh leaves, I don't think Gonzaga ceases to exist the way that it is today.
I'd agree with that. I think these are probably the only ones. I'm going to throw this out here. I don't think they're a blue blood, but I'm going to throw them out here because they've had success with multiple coaches. Illinois. Illinois has had success. Bill Self, Bruce
Not
Weber.
enough historical success.
Underwood. That's fair. I mean, they don't have the championships, to your point, but they're I would put them in the second tier.
That's fair.
Wish we were a blue blood. That would be our tier that we belong in.
Coming up in 15 minutes, we'll get to questions and answers next. We got some questions for Jeremy Rutherford, Blues Insider here on 101 ESPN.
Alex Ferrario with you to talk about my friends over at Rhino Shield, who I use to update the exterior of my home. I did this 3 years ago because when we purchased the house, the paint was chipping off of the brick that we had on the front. Our siding looked deteriorated. There were some water stains on the side of the house because they didn't have the proper navigation for the water coming off of our roof. It was just bad. And so we wanted a new look. I thought I could do it myself, and I'm so glad I called Darren at Rhino Shield because he came out and explained to me what the process was. You use paint that you buy at the hardware store. You're going to be painting it every single year because it's a different coating process than what Rhino Shield does. They do a 2 to 3 coating process that is much stronger any type of paint you're going to put on the side of your home. It works with whatever type of siding you have on your home. And the part about it is the elements that it faces and how Rhino Shield withstands it. It's 100% waterproof. It deflects 90% of the UV rays. I can attest to this because my house, again, painted 3 years ago, and through 3 years of all of the elements that it's seen, it looks brand new. That's the work you get from Rhino Shield. So give Darren a call today. Have him come out, give you a free quote to look at the siding of your home. Find out how you can give it a facelift with the coating of a Rhino. 877-25-RHINO. That's 877-25RHINO.com.
Terry Hunters here with a Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. The Cardinals dropped Game 1 to the Philadelphia Phillies last night in extras 5-3. They're back in action tonight. 6:45 will be first pitch. Sonny Gray will make his Cardinals debut. He'll be going up against Zach Wheeler for the Philadelphia Phillies. And the Blues will be back in action tomorrow night when they take on the Chicago Blackhawks. We'll have pregame coverage starting at 6 o'clock with Alex Ferrario and Joey Vitale. The Joey will join Chris Garber for Puck Drop at 7. The Sports Update was driven by Johnny Lotto. Find your road shop 24/7 at lottoff.com, lottofautoPlex.com. Are you kidding me?
Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. Good to know that the St. Louis Blues play again tomorrow night. They'll be going up against the Chicago Blackhawks. T-Bone helping us out with that in the update. Right now, we are happy to go out to the 101 ESPN hotline to be joined by our friend and the Blues insider for The Athletic. He's Jeremy Rutherford joining us here on the show. JR, appreciate the time as always, man. Let's get into the obvious, which is a Blues team that has really seen itself kind of crumble over the last few games. What's happened, in your opinion, that has led to these kinds of issues against San Jose and Anaheim?
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. First of all, I think that down the stretch here, the team realizes it's sort of an acceptance of what their fate here is down the stretch. But I think, it's been a year-long trend with these losses to the bottom feeders. Anaheim, San Jose, Columbus, Chicago. I know Alex has rattled off the record against those teams throughout the year. Obviously, they've been terribly outscored by these teams. I think from what I have said in the past, it goes back to what Craig Berube said. This is a team that likes to follow things, feel things out, and see how games are going to go, and wait for that first period. What type of game is it going to be? How do we have to respond? And by that time, sometimes these games have been 2-0, and you're chasing a little bit. I know recently the Blues have had some good first periods against those teams, and can't solve the goaltender, and then all of a sudden they're behind, and now you're kind of pulling your hair out. So it has been a tough situation for the Blues in those games, and they're definitely going to have to get that trend turned around next season.
So speaking of that trend, JR, I was reading a piece earlier today on Daily Faceoff that did an interview with Barry Trotz about his time with Nashville this season, taking over as GM, and he talked about how something that resonated with him from another GM talking about if I had to redo something with my team, a number of veteran players, we moved on from all of our stars, you get rid of everybody, you're going to put kids in a bad situation. And Trotz talked about that's why he went after Ryan O'Reilly and Luke Shen, and why he traded away Ryan Johansson and Matt Duchene. He said it was evident to me that I needed to have a couple of players that brought the good culture into our locker room, and we showed that by fighting all the way to the end of the season. I know that's a long way to ask this question, but if Barry Trotz recognized that there was a culture problem last year and changed it in an offseason, does that same thing have to happen with Doug Armstrong this season?
Yeah, I think so, but the only thing is you have to hit on those guys, and are they available? And I think that Barry Trotz, he is just such a great hockey mind.
Yeah.
Everybody knows that. I don't need to remind you, but he is just great. He knows exactly what a room needs. He knew it as a player, talking to people who played with him, a head coach, and now in his position as a GM with the Nashville Predators. And he found two of the best in the league. Like, if you had to sit down and put a list together of the top 20 names of guys who can come in and help change that culture, it is Luke Shen and Ryan O'Reilly. And, yeah, you're going to catch them at the tail end of their career. And, yeah, you're probably going to have to maybe give them an extra year on that contract, but it's going to be worth it because it's going to allow, as you said, to kind of teach those younger players and, bring them into the league and get them into the culture and building the culture in Nashville that you're going to need to sustain that success. And so whether Ryan O'Reilly and Luke Shen are there in 4 or 5 years, they may not be and probably won't be, but their imprint on the team will be there. So, is that possible for Doug Armstrong to do that one-off season? Obviously they're not going to go back to O'Reilly, and Shen's a guy obviously not available, but I think if they can find guys like that to come in and help turn that tide, that would be key to get this thing turned around faster than maybe people expect.
As a bit of a follow-up to that, JR, and I'm not trying to play the pessimistic route, I promise you. I actually think next year's team might be more fun to watch while also being a little bit worse in the standings, but should we be expecting them to be a decent amount better next year? Like, is that a fair expectation given where they're at in their retool?
Well, and I'm not trying to ride the fence here, but I honestly think that could be the hardest question to answer right now because you don't know what it's going to look like. I understand that Doug Armstrong and the Blues want to be competitive. I would expect them to make some major moves. I would expect them to try to do what they can to be competitive next year. But is that removing some of these contracts and do you replace them? I find it hard to believe that they're going to jump into free agency or make major trades that's going to put you into, contending status next year. I think this offseason is going to be about changing the complexion of the roster and moving out some guys that you don't think you're going to be able to win with or might not be good for that culture. And what's it going to take to move those guys? Who are you going to replace them with? I just think it's an impossible question to answer right now because, as Alex and Donnie Fandango and I said on the podcast this morning, that'll be out later today, Last Minute Blues podcast, you just don't know what this group's going to look like. Who's going to be a dance partner for Doug Armstrong to pull off some of these trades that could make that team that you're talking about next year?
So, by the way, great drop in there, JR. Just putting it on the table for the Last Minute Blues podcast. God, I love this guy. We talk so much about the word culture, and I had talked to Doug Wade about this on Sunday for our pregame show. You're in the locker room all season long. Does it feel like the culture is still off? Because that narrative was there last season with the Blues.
Well, to me, here's what it feels like, and I don't know if this will answer the question specifically, but here's what it looks like to me. I've been around this Blues locker room for 19 years. There's years where it feels whole, and it feels like this is the Blues team, and there's a core, and I can see who the leaders are, and I can see the other guys look up to these leaders. And then there are years, especially early on when I covered the team, 2006-07, where they were just in full-on rebuild mode, but there wasn't a ton of expectations or pressure, and everybody was just trying to get better. To me, and I know this is pretty obvious here, but it just feels like a total transition. Like the roster of 23 guys, it doesn't feel like a point in time where you look at the Blues roster, hey, I remember that team. They had this guy, this guy, this guy. He was a great leader, so on and so forth. To me, it just feels like a bunch of parts put together that's going to try to get you through to the next couple of years. And essentially that's what the retool is. But what I'm saying, there's so much criticism of the team. There's so much, this needs to happen, this needs to happen. I go inside this Blues locker room, guys. It just seems like you're at a salvage yard and it's a bunch of parts laying around.
Man, that is a strong comment. How do you fix that, JR? Because, some of that is just the nature of going through a retool, right? Because, Kevin Hayes, notice, this sounds terrible. It's not disrespect to him. I promise, not meant that way at least. This is the kind of guy that you bring in the midst of a retool because you say, okay, listen, we know exactly what he's going to be. He's going to center our third line, and he at least allows us to evaluate the players that are next to him on a line, right? But by doing that, you're also doing what you're saying, where you do have kind of spare parts, and Kevin Hayes probably is not going to be around when the Blues are good again. So is there a way to avoid doing more of that this offseason?
It's a good question, and I think I don't want to be a hypocrite because when they brought in a couple of those guys, like a Kapanen, like a Vrana, like a Kevin Hayes, I wrote stories about, Doug Armstrong is doing some great bargain basement shopping here, and he's getting guys at 50%, and it's going to help the team be somewhat competitive during this retool. But now after watching it for a year, and we've seen what's happened with specifically two of those guys, Vrana and Kapanen, just hasn't been great years, and they're going to move on after this year, but now you have Kevin Hayes for 2 more years. And my question, whether it be now or my question to Doug Armstrong at the end of the season when we hold that press conference would be, do you still feel like you want to be competitive and bring in a couple guys like a Kevin Hayes, because that's probably what you're shopping for in the offseason if you're not planning to give out the big bucks or the long-term contracts, which I don't think they are. Do you want to do that? Is that helping you through this retool to put a product on the ice that, they're going to win some games, fans are going to keep coming to the games, as opposed to the opposite where maybe you take a little bit of a step back and you let some of these younger guys develop and see where you're at in a couple of years till you get to the point now you can go out and make that big trade or sign those free agents. So, there's going to be so many questions, but specific to your Kevin Hayes question, how many more years do you want to do that and tie up the team in terms of finishing in the middle of the pack and getting a later draft pick than you probably could have if you didn't bring those types of guys in.
Jer, final one for me, and I apologize for putting you on the spot here because no, I'm not doing this, but we're talking about this and how you said that it feels like it's just a bunch of spare parts, and so I'm trying to think of the last time that it felt that way in a transition for the Blues, and the roster I'm looking at right now was 2009, 2010. This was the year following where the Blues were able to get into the playoffs on that big stretch that they had in the second part of the season, but you're looking at it, they had the young pieces in the Oshis and the Perrons and the Berglunds and the Petrangelos. They had the veterans in the McDonald's and the Paul Correas and the Keith Kachucks. So it felt like you were making progress. The difference with this roster now and that roster back then feels like that one had the veterans that players were willing to listen to. And I'm not trying to be cruel here, but does it feel like that the veterans on this side right now with this roster might not have as much of an impact as the Kachucks and the Correas did?
Or that the young players were more willing to listen.
That's the other thing, too.
Yeah, and to answer it, I got to start it off by saying, yes, it does feel like a salvage yard. Yes, it does feel like a lot of spare parts, but there's so much to look forward to in terms of the neighbors, the Toropchenkos, the Kessels, the Joel Hofers, those guys. So there is a ton of upside as to what's going on here. And you reflect back to that year. Yes, it's a great comparison. There were a lot of aging veterans on a roster with a lot of good, young, up-and-coming players. You know, the names that you just mentioned, Keith Kachuk being at the top of the list, just a ton of respect for those guys. Like, they couldn't say something without four guys, Oshie, Perron, Berglund, listening to what he said and trying to learn from it. You know, I see a similar situation here with a couple of the guys. A Braden Shen, universally respected within this locker room. A Justin Falk. You know, some of these other guys too, even though I'm not going to name them all, I think there's some respect for them. I just think that these guys, these young guys, they know the future's ahead of them. They know they're on the right track. You talk to a Snuggerud or a Dvorsky, and they will tell you, look at all these prospects. We know we have something building here. So I think there's a ton of upside. You know, whether they take something along the way from a Falk, Krug, Shen, those guys, that's behind the scenes. That's, conversations that we're not privy to. I think it can be that way, but I don't think you can match some of the names that you mentioned, some of the bigger names in the sport, some of the guys who every time they said anything, you were definitely clinging on to it. So somewhat similar situation.
He's Jeremy Rutherford. You can find his great work over at The Athletic, and be sure to follow him on Twitter as well, at JP Rutherford. JR, we appreciate the time as always, my friend. Thanks so much. We'll talk with you again soon.
Yep, sounds good. Thanks.
See you, Jer.
That's Jeremy Rutherford joining us as he does each and every week here in BK and Ferrario.
And now that I'm looking more into it, because I'm going back and looking through this, maybe that wasn't a good comp for me in terms of that roster. I think the better comp is 2011, 2012. That was the year Hitchcock took over when they fired Davis Payne. But listen to these names and tell me this doesn't sound a lot like where the Blues are at right now. 27-year-old David Backes, 24-year-old TJ Oshie, 21-year-old Alex Petrangelo, 22-year-old Kevin Shattenkirk, 23 Perron, 23 Berglund, 23 Chris Stewart, 27 Alexander Steen, but then lumped in there a 36-year-old Jason Arnott, a 36-year-old Jamie Langenbrunner, and a 34-year-old Andy McDonald. That feels more like where the Blues are at right now, where you see the potential of the Oshies, the Backuses, the Perrons, the Berglunds. You've got some of those spare parts that JR's talking about in the Arnotts and the Langenbruners. The question is, are those young players taking that step that those guys did in 2010, 2011, 2012? And go back to the interview that we had with Backes about a month ago, where Backes said, look, it took us having to punch Vladimir Tarasenko in the face at practice to finally get on the same page. And by the way, that year that I'm referencing, you were waiting for the next year for Vladimir Tarasenko and Jaden Schwartz to join the roster like the Blues are doing right now with Snuggerud and Dvorsky. But those are some really strong words by JR, and I don't think he's putting that in a negative tone. I think he's saying exactly what we're all seeing right now. Yep. Wondering why this team's not meshing. It's because you have a roster and a group right now that's wondering who they are. We've got these guys that aren't going to be here in 3 years. We got these guys that are coming in 3 years. What is this roster? And I think until you address what this roster is, you're going to keep having those same results.
He's Alex. That's T-Bone. I'm BK. If you missed any of our conversation with JR, it was a good one. Check it out on the podcast page, 101ESPN.com. The free 101 ESPN app is where you go to find it. Coming up next, questions and answers here on BK and Ferrario.
I've already got it on my calendar for this Friday. It's supposed to be nice out. I've got it planned. My wife and I are taking our daughters to Ted Drew's to get the famous frozen custard. Open for its 95th season. Since 1929, it has been a St. Louis tradition for families, for friends, just going out and having a good time off of Chippewa. And I mentioned putting it on my schedule with my girls because that's what I used to do with my family. My parents, after a Friday, when they both got home from work, we would load up the car, we'd go eat on the hill, and then we'd walk over to Ted Drew's and get that famous frozen custard. I loved those traditions, and now I'm trying to instill those with my daughter. And look, you can go there, you could buy it in the courts and bring it home with you. You could just sit in the trunk of your car and get the s'more, get the caramel apple sundae, or maybe the all shook up if you're a big fan of Reese's peanut butter and bananas. Whatever you want, they can do it for you at Ted Drew's. And while you're there, walk across the parking lot and buy some Ted Drew's apparel. Get some hats, some drinkware, whether it's Route 66 themed, St. Louis themed, Ted Drew's themed. You can also buy gifts for people that you never know what to buy them with gift cards. Everything for you. A good time over at Ted Drew's. Go check them out off of Chippewa. Ted Drew's. It really is good guys and gals.
Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. You got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. Kind of going back to our conversation we just had, Alex, with Jeremy Rutherford. Somebody on the text line asks, guys, could we see David Perron back as an unrestricted free agent this offseason to help reinstill some of that Blues culture back into the locker room?
No, I don't think so. I don't think Detroit's going to let him go. I mean, if Detroit lets him walk, maybe, but the funny thing about this is you're seeing...
He would want a no move. If I'm him, I'd be like, listen, Army, I'll come back, but for one reason.
Such a troll move. Come back for 1 year deal and ask for a no-move clause. What a troll job. The thing about it is, like, we're talking about culture. Look at the teams that have acquired the Blues players that had that. Vegas with Petro, Nashville with O'Reilly, Detroit with David Perron, Pat Maroon when he went to the Tampa Bay Lightning, Barbashev now with Vegas. Like, you're seeing it. You're just seeing it elsewhere. I don't believe Steve Yzerman will let a player like David Perron go because he's exactly what the Blues would be wanting to come back and return.
So I heard yesterday on the Fast Lane, let's go ahead and bring it up here. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. Jamie mentioned that the Blues don't have a clear identity. They're trying to be the rush team, but they've got multiple players that don't really fit into that identity. And even as a rush team, they're not particularly good at it, frankly. But then he brought up, okay, so what do they do? How do they get away from that? What do they need to do to become more of a coherent roster? And he brought up Pat Maroon and Zadorov. Zadorov I'd be fine with, frankly. Sure, no issues there.
But why? Like, Zadorov is the one I have a problem with.
Oh, interesting. I don't think there's any spot on this roster for Pat Maroon.
Oh, I could find a spot for him right now.
Where?
On
the fourth line. The fourth line's figured out.
You've got the fourth line. Like, this team's problem is not the fourth line.
Do
Their
you,
fourth
though?
line is, yeah.
Yeah, it's Torpo, Walker, and...
To me, Torpo's a top 9 player right now.
Who am I
Totally
forgetting?
disagree. I think he's an underqualified
Sonny.
top 9 player. I think he's a great
Sonny might
fourth
not be here
liner.
till December next year.
Sure, but you got Zach Dean. Like...
Do we, though? I don't know how they feel about Zach Dean.
You need to find out.
Dean might be in the AHL next season.
Sure, but that's a center. Like, Pat Maroon's not playing center for you anyways.
I mean, like, I can argue for Pat Maroon all I want. The problem is it doesn't really matter who you bring in if the players don't want to listen to that player. Like, we brought in Kevin...
Man, we're trying to get good at hockey, man.
They brought in Kevin Hayes to bring good vibes. And, like, does anybody feel the good
Sonny
vibes
is here
this season?
for that. Like, this is not about any one player. Man, they need to win. And that's what's breaking up the locker room. They're not winning.
And they need talent to win.
Yes.
But this is why I would be more out on the Zadorov side of it. Like, guys, Zadorov is not a top 4 defenseman. Like, you're bringing Zadorov in because he's tough and he's big and he plays nasty in front of the net.
He can play top 4. Like, he's better than some of what you have in your top 4 right now.
Fine, but I don't think he's that much of an upgrade over it. The only upgrade is he brings a aggressive presence. I don't think he's moving the puck out of your zone any better than any of the guys you got right now.
Maybe not.
I think you need an upgrade to play with Colton Parayko. That's what you're looking for, and this isn't it.
I think what you do there, like, if you bring in Zadorov, it's funny that we both had, like, very opposite reactions to this.
I don't want either of them, so we all have opposite ones.
I mean,
I think there are other players that I would prefer over Zadorov, don't get me wrong. But if he's going to come in at a relatively reasonable price, like he was at $3.75 million for his last cap hit.
my guess is it's going to be closer to 4.5.
Oh, really?
With the cap going up, and he's 28 years old.
If you could get him around that $4 million range, like the Nick Leddy contract, I'd be fine with that.
I think Sorry, I keep you interrupting.
If you put him in the Nick Leddy role, I think he's better in that role for that responsibility with Colton Parayko than Nick Leddy is currently. Is it a significant upgrade? Maybe not, but I think you upgrade there.
I think you're just redoing what you did with the Marco Scandella trade. I think you're just getting another Marco Scandella, and we've seen Jay Fresh reference it. Like, you don't need another defensive defenseman to play with Parayko. You need somebody who could keep the puck in the offensive zone.
I think I disagree with him there because of the way that they utilize him, because of his responsibility. We've talked about this a lot, and maybe some of this is a sign that they need to really upgrade their second pair defensively to be comfortable putting them on the ice against other teams.
I think you do that if you move Leddy down to that second pair.
Maybe, but that's the kind of thing that they need to get better. Stop focusing on who they are in the club, like in the locker room. Man, get better players. If you do that, you're going to be much better in the locker room because winning cures all. We saw this with the Cardinals. The Cardinals clubhouse with the guys that were in it, it's mostly the same dudes last year that were in it 2 years ago.
You don't think they're feeling better?
The change, I'm talking about like 23 versus 22 when they were good. The difference was they won in 2022, and they did not do a lot of winning last year. And so, yeah, when you're losing, people are miserable, dude. It sucks to lose. When you have money problems in your own personal life, man, it sucks the life out of you. And people become different as humans when you have money problems at home. And so, like, it causes problems. The leading cause of divorce in America is money problems. The reason I'm bringing this up is because, like, money problems at home is basically losing in professional sports.
Yeah.
And so, like, you see the worst out of anybody when you're going through the worst of times. I think that's what's happening for the Blues. I think that's what happened last year for the Cardinals. And until they start getting back to winning, yeah, the clubhouse is going to be an issue.
And I do think that the culture side of it, because I agree, like, winning is going to make a difference. But the Cardinals did also focus on getting a couple of bad eggs out of their locker room and Flaherty and O'Neill. And I think that's what the Blues right now have to assess first in the offseason. Who are the bad eggs that don't need to be around? All
right, final thing here before we get to a question that I have big picture on the Cardinals. Guys, am I the only one that is not impressed with Jordan Walker? That comes from the 314. I still think Jordan Walker is going to be an outstanding baseball player. I think he's had some real struggles to start out this season, though, and they are discouraging. But I am still very much in on Jordan Walker.
I mean, the upside is there. I'm concerned that you're trending towards ruining him. I'm anticipating we're sending Walker down to figure out his offense to AAA, and I think you're going to start ruining these guys sooner or later.
I'm still very bullish on Jordan Walker. I do continue to find it interesting that people like Jim Edmonds, who is a hitting guru, would say on the broadcast, and he said it this past weekend against the Marlins, it looks like he's trying to lift the ball, and it looks like it's impacting his swing.
Who told him to lift the ball?
That's a Cardinals thing. I can't help but when I hear Jim Edmonds say that, it makes me go, okay, what's going on?
And Eduardo Perez
said it as well before his car was being ruined after it just got washed.
He's so mad.
I still think he's going to be a stud. I really do. Give it time. Give it time, though.
He's Alex. That's T-Bone on BK. Coming up next, I am on a secondary ticket pricing site right now. And Alex, I'm not going to tell anybody what it is. If they want to advertise
probably
with
illegal.
us, more than welcome to do so. It is not illegal. It is very much a forward-facing site. I can get into tonight's game for one ticket in the Diamond Club or Diamond box seats for $13. Wow. Sonny Gray's making his debut. Zach Wheeler's on the mound for the Phillies. Bryce Harper is on the Phillies. This is one of the most star-studded lineups and 2 years ago, World Series contending team. The Cardinals are better this year, even if they're not great. So why are tickets so cheap, and why did last night they have an attendance that would have ranked as the third lowest from 2023, last year, when they were in the midst of their worst season in more than a decade? We'll talk about that. Want to hear from you guys via the Rhino Shield mic drop feature coming up next year on 101 ESPN. With Alex Ferrario, I'm Brandon Kiley. Our friends over at Green Envy Lawn Care have taken care of us. Alex, when I first moved into my house, I got to tell you, it was patchy. It was brown in half of the different spots. Our backyard was a complete wasteland. I tried to do what everybody else does, right? I went in and I'm like, I got this. I've got this taken care of. I'm going to overseed. I'm going to put the fertilizer down. I've got everything taken care of. I even did the dethatching. Like, I researched everything I could possibly do. None of it worked because those old places that you go to, the national brands, they don't take care of you for Missouri soil. You got to give Green Envy a call today because they know what to do for your soil.
That's the biggest part. They're using products that work best for Missouri weather, for the turf types, the soil. It's not the cheap stuff that you're just going to buy. If you've got spring weeds because of the rain, they'll take care of that. Crabgrass is a massive problem. They can take care of that as well. It's all there for you with Green Envy. They have service professionals that are licensed by the Missouri Department of Agriculture. What I love about it, too, is they leave you a note on the door that says what they did and what you could do to maintain that green lawn. Give them a call today. Tell them Alex and BK sent you. 636-757-1600. That's 636-757-1600.
Until either Walker, Winn, or Scott become a legit superstar, it is just not worth going to the game. Too expensive. Even if the tickets are cheap, the drinks and the food are so expensive that it's better to stay at home. The team's boring. It's not worth the money.
That's what it sounded like from Cameron. He's not interested in the Cardinals right now. Are you interested in going to Cardinals games? Because if you are, hey, you can go to secondary ticket market right now and check out some Diamond Box seats down in section 140. You're okay. $13 for a ticket for Diamond Box. Section 140. Okay. Alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK, you got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. Alex, the attendance last night was dreadful. Absolutely dreadful. And I'm not blaming any fans. I want to make that clear up front. If you don't want to go to a game, man, don't go to a game. That's fine. You spend your money however you please. I'm not telling you that you need to be going down to the ballpark, but I was shocked to see it. Now, I do want to say this also on the front end. Yesterday was very obvious as to what happened. There were clear excuses, explanations, however you want to frame it, as to how you get a low attendance. Everybody was interested in the eclipse. A lot of people went south for it, and you're driving 3, 4, 5, 6 hours stuck in the car, not getting back to the game, and you probably didn't buy tickets because you knew you had something else going on that was an event for you and your family that day. Totally get all of that. Don't blame you for it, honestly. But one of the things that is a leading indicator on attendance is secondary ticket prices. And right now, when you can go over to these secondary ticket price markets and you can see, hey, I can get in, including the fees, which are typically right around $5 to $10, for like $10 to $15, and you can get good seats, like lower level, front 15 rows down the first baseline for $15. That suggests to me that for Sonny Gray's debut as a Cardinal against Zach Wheeler, with one of the biggest brands in baseball in the Philadelphia Phillies, a good team with star power littered throughout their lineup, when that team is in town and there is a lag in attendance, and again, last night, third fewest in terms of attendance for last season's team, that stunk. If that continues, Alex, over the next few games, and again, the prices suggest that it is basically the same as it was last night, what does that tell you about how Cardinals fans feel about this team right now?
I think it's telling you that the Cardinals fans are finally doing what we've wondered if they were going to do about this roster. I think there's a lot of frustration with this team, and St. Louis is a smart fan base. We talk about it all the time, but like that's hard work, hard-earned money that individuals go out there and do, and I don't know if they're willing to spend it. It doesn't seem like they're willing to spend it on a team that's not showing that same effort. Now, this doesn't have anything to do with the players. I think this is more to do with the front office and the moves that they went with in the offseason and the ownership. I think that's the more side of it. Plus, it's just easier to stay home. I think when it comes to having to load up and pay the money to park and then get down there and then find your seats and pay for all the money and the drinks and then watch a mediocre team, I'm not sure if fans are willing to go at that the same way as they would have, well, I just watch it at home. And I also wonder, and I'm just spitballing right here.
Sure. I mean, everything is just a hypothesis at this point.
I also wonder if because of the lack of or inability to access the television side of it to watch the game, I wonder if that's taken away a lot of the interest from the fans to where it's like, I can't watch it at home anymore. So maybe my interest is just gone from the Cardinals. Like if I can't catch them on television, I'm not going to spend the money to go. I just don't really care. I'll move on and I'll figure out what happens the next day.
Who are you talking about with that?
The fans.
Who's not accessing it?
People that can't access it on the television if they're not willing to pay the subscription for it.
For Bally?
Yeah.
Blackout. I mean, that's what he's talking
the blackout stuff.
Yeah, I mean, but that's been the case for years. Like that's not something that is new. That's been the case for like that's not something that's changed. So that's why I'm following up.
I'm just wondering if the trend has started with the team hasn't been active to draw your interest in. The blackouts have been very apparent, and it's just to the point where you're starting to lose interest overall with the team. So why would I spend money to go if I'm just not caring as much anymore?
Fair. Yeah, I get that for sure. I don't know about the TV. Maybe. I don't know why that would be changing today as opposed to like 3, 4, 5 years ago.
I think my mindset is so like you have to either have a cable subscription or you have to subscribe to something that has the Bally Sports. Like my brother-in-law has YouTube TV and it doesn't have Bally Sports. So when you can't watch the game, your interest has just continued to
I do agree with this.
decrease to where it's like, well, they're not on at home. I'm not watching them every night. And now you're telling me I could go drop $150 to go to a game. Well, I don't even care about watching them at home because I can't get it. So why should I care about going to the game?
That's
just
sense.
My thought process.
That makes sense. And there's fewer and fewer people having cable subscriptions, so maybe it is a lack. Are they available on YouTube TV? I don't have YouTube.
It's not YouTube. I don't either, but my brother-in-law has YouTube TV. And when I'm over there, they can't watch Blues or Cardinals games.
That's terrible. Like it's got to be available on some of those streaming services.
You have to purchase it. And again, I don't know how this all works because I have one specific company, but you have to have it, I think, either through the Bally Sports app or you have to have like a TV subscription to watch the game.
All right, I want to hear from you guys. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. We also have the mic drop feature on the 101 ESPN app. Last night was, if you break it compared to the attendance from last year, because I see a lot of people on the text line that are saying, guys, the attendance is always down in April. Sure. Last year, they did play baseball games in April, and this would have been the third fewest in terms of attendance for a 2023 Cardinals game. Out of all of the 81 home dates, this would have been a bottom 3 attendance from yesterday. In the trend line based on the secondary ticket market for the next couple of games is roughly the same as what it was for the game yesterday. So it's not purely explained by a lot of people having something going on with the eclipse. Let's go to the mic drop feature. Let's hear from Jake.
I love the Cardinals just as much as anyone else, one of my favorite sports teams. The problem I have, and I'm a marketing person, is that I can't go to see a poor product when I don't feel the ownership, the front office are investing in the team. Beyond that, we've seen this time and time again where the offense struggles when they're supposed to be great and there's no investment put into it. Yes, we saw some changes in leadership and in the coaching staff in the past year, but nothing on the field is really changing. I will give some credit to the pitching staff, but the hitting is just not there. There's no liveliness, there's no entertainment value.
This is where I feel like a majority of Cardinals fans are at. And it really does, like when the opening drive asked Mo about, the push for the playoffs and things like that, and he kind of took offense to it and saying, like, we're proud of this team and what we did. You can be proud of it all you want, but if a fan base, and again, St. Louis is so intelligent with this, if they don't see the effort on your side, they're not going to give you their effort, if that makes sense. Like the Blues right now. So many people are frustrated with the Blues because it's lack of effort. I think lack of effort came from the front office when this offseason showed up and the first moves were Lance Lynn and Kyle Gibson, whether you like them or not. And then they went Sonny Gray, and then you had all of these other talented pitchers available, and they said, no, we're good. We're good right here. And I also think, like we've talked about, this carried over from last season, where I feel like Mo kind of pulled the dupe on everybody to where it was, we're going to spend more money, and then it's Adam Wainwright's getting a bulk of that money.
I want to hear from more of you guys. We have a decent amount of mic drops coming in right now. Let's continue this on the other side. When you think about the attendance that's taking place right now for the Cardinals, again, it's only one game so far, but the trend line suggests that it's going to be more of the same over the next couple of days. Why is that? Why is it for you, for your situation, you don't seem to be interested, if that is the case for you, with the product right now that is being played on the field for the Cardinals? Because there are a lot of reasons as to why I think people maybe should be interested in the Cardinals, but clearly it's not resonating. So we'll talk about that on the other side, hear from you guys as well. The mic drop features on the 101 ESPN app. It's BK and Ferrario.
think it's going to take a little while for the hangover of last year to wash off. You know, you didn't really do anything exciting in the offseason to make people think it's going to be a whole lot different. I think you solidified the club to be a competitive team like you have in the past, but you didn't do anything exciting. So winning is the only thing that's going to wash this stink off, and it's probably going to take a little while.
That is what it sounded like from Nick on the Mic Drop feature. If you guys want to get involved in the show, the Mic Drop feature is on the 101 ESPN app. Give us your thoughts. We're talking about the attendance from last night for the St. Louis Cardinals. Now, some of this is explainable. The Cardinals had what would have been their third lowest attendance from last year in that game yesterday against the Phillies. There's some explanations for that. One, yesterday, there was the eclipse. A lot of you guys, my family, I had some people from there that went down south. They wanted to go see the total eclipse. Could have done so by driving what is normally about an hour south. Yesterday took about 6 hours round trip to be able to do that.
Did they even make it down there in time to watch the eclipse?
They did not. So
see, way to go, guys.
Decided we're going to pull off here. We'll see what it looks like from here. It'll be fine. Did the whole 3-hour road trip and got basically nothing out of it. But, you know, it is what it is. So that was part of it, for sure. Part of it is what they said there. Hey, it's going to take some time to get the stink off of this thing. Last year was so terrible that you're seeing right now the drag of a bad season. And they talked about that Cardinals did during the offseason. They said, hey, part of why we didn't spend more money is because we know you ain't coming to the games. It's like, wait, do you understand that might have a trickle-down effect for 2025
That's
as well?
not good marketing.
That being said, Alex, feels a little different right now. I can only speak to my experience here in St. Louis. It dates back almost 10 years now. It started here in 2016 on the station, being on the air. And this is about as frustrated as I can remember fans being. It includes this offseason, last year certainly, and people are apparently speaking with their wallets as well as with their mouths now by not going to the games. Tickets for tonight can get in for very cheap in a way that's pretty rare to get down at the ballpark. Alex, I do want to provide some probably necessary context, and we will hear from you guys in just a second via the Mic Drop feature on the 101 ESPN app. If you look last year at weekday April attendance for the Cardinals, here's what it looked like. 37,000, 36,000, 36,000, 37, 37, 36, 39. So they weren't drawing crazy attendance last year either in April. You go back to 2022. They didn't have very many weekday April games, which helps them in this regard. 35, 32, 35, 33 when it came to attendance. That's thousands of people that go through the gates. In 2019, the last time, because 21 and 20, kind of different. 21, they were still at limited capacity. 20, they didn't play games in April because of the pandemic, plus the lockout, kind of, if you want to call it that. 36, 36, 36, 38, 36, 38, 36. That was their attendance in terms of thousands of people that walked through the door. Again, weekday April games. These are always a tough draw for the Cardinals. There's kids in school. It's hard for families to get out there during the month of April. There's just a lot working against the Cardinals. Yesterday felt different. I think today is once again going to feel different. We'll see if it becomes a trend, but it's worth noting. Let's hear from you guys via the Mic Drop feature on the 101 ESPN app. Let's hear from Alec.
I love baseball, but I've never been so pessimistic on our Cardinals team, and we just haven't necessarily had an exciting team since 22, and outside of 22, probably since 2015 when we were really good. So it's not cheap. You can get a cheap ticket. Great. Even if I spend $1 for myself and my 2 kids and my wife, I'm still spending a lot of money on parking. I'm still dealing with the hassle of having young kids there. I'd rather just be at home and watch it on my TV because I'm not motivated by any of our players, by how they play, or by the ballpark or any of the amenities around it to go to a game and spend, $150, $200 on food and beverages and fun stuff. It's just not worth it.
Look, I'll give you this scenario because I think Alec nailed it there. So last night we were talking about it on the air, about how tickets were like $2 to get in. And so I got home, my wife was off work, and I looked at her and I said, you want to go to the game tonight? It's like, it's cheap. Take the girls. And she looked at me and she goes, that's a lot of hassle to get to a game.
Sure.
It's loading the kids up, getting them in the car, driving, finding parking, paying for parking, going to your seat, paying for food, paying for drinks, and then sitting there. And I think to Alec's point, unless the team is drawing you to the point where it's like, yeah, that's worth it right now. And 3 months from now, maybe we're saying they are. Maybe they're the best team in the NL Central, and they've got this young talent. But in April, you've got to do something in the offseason to get people excited. And I'd be interested, BK, if you have the numbers in front of you still, of what the attendance in April was when they acquired Arenado and when they acquired Goldschmidt.
Okay, so I gave you the attendance for Arenado. That would have... Was that
2019?
2019 would have been Goldie, right? Isn't that the case? I'm
I
mistaken.
can't remember.
I was going to say, I can't remember when both those guys were acquired.
I want to say Goldie was 2019. Arenado would have been 2021, if I'm not mistaken.
Goldie would have been 19.
And that's when you had limited capacity, so it's hard to do apples to apples. I will do, though, an apples to apples of when they were good. 2014, right? You're in the midst of the Cardinals being a really good club. Because, and this is a decade ago, a lot of things have changed. The economy, like lives, whatever. The way that we consume baseball has changed since 2014. But going back to 2014, their first series, a home opener is always going to be a big draw, of course, 47,000. But after that, Tuesday game against Cincinnati, 40,000. Wednesday game against the Cincinnati Reds, 41,000 people. Then they didn't have very many other games at home during the week. They had 3 more at the end of the month against Milwaukee. 40,000, 40,000, 40,000. This is a winning thing, man. Like, if the team was good...
I think it's a winning and a winning mindset thing, too.
Sure.
Like, I think the narrative...
Those two, I think, are kind of connected.
Yeah, I feel like that offseason you have to pounce, and the way that Mo has approached these past offseasons of like, well, we got to be good enough, and I think that's going to draw people away.
2013 or 2014, of course, you're also coming off of a team that went to the World Series. Right. So there is some, like, it's the opposite effect of what we saw for this team in 2024, where you're coming off of one of the worst seasons that you've had in recent memory. So you go back the year prior, where you're coming off of 2012, which wasn't quite the same level of success for the club. They won 88 games, did end up going to the NLCS, but only won 88 games during the regular season. You go back to that one. Tuesday game against Cincinnati, not the home opener. They drew 37. The next one, 35. You go beyond that in the month of April. You look at some of the home stands, 37, 38,000. So maybe this is just what you expect in the month of April, whether it's good or bad. If this starts to lag into the 32, 33, 34,000 in announced attendance, though, and again, that's announced attendance. The actual people that are sitting there, it ain't even that high. That is when it definitely becomes something that is worth looking into. And the Cardinals, I promise you, will take note of that. Let's hear from Robert via the mic drop feature.
Guys, I'll tell you why nobody's coming to games. It's because, though it took a couple of years, fans are finally realizing that the only way to encourage the Cardinals to change is to withhold our spending dollars from them. It's the way you approach, the way you spend your money everywhere else. It's the way that I've been applying or not applying my disposable income to the Cardinals over the last 2 years, and I'm glad to see it. Not because I want them to lose money, but because I want them to get better.
It's funny to play that game because it's a tough game to play, because you hope that you make a stance and make a statement to the team so that they make a change. And if they don't, then it draws even more frustration. And then that frustration builds over to the next season, and then it builds to the next season. And this is speaking of somebody who has a grudge problem. I'm happy to admit it. Ladies and gentlemen, my name's Alex Ferrario. I have a grudge problem.
We know.
But after it happens once, and then it doesn't get fixed, and then it happens again, and it doesn't get fixed, man, you build up that anger. It is going to take a lot for you to turn that tide around. I think Blues fans are feeling it right now, of thinking, like, you need to fix this. And if they're not going to games and you're hoping they fix it, well, now you just build up more aggression and more anger. I think that's happening with the Cardinals right now. And even if they're good, I think people are still angry of how the last couple of seasons have gone.
So I do want to continue this. We'll do it again on the other side. What can be done to fix that loop? Like, what can the Cardinals do to make you feel like they are invested in this club? Because I know payroll gets people very upset, and myself included, but if you look at their payroll, they're right in line with what they should be spending for their market size and for what they're bringing in revenue-wise. They're like right around the top 10 this year. They have been for a long time now when it comes to their actual spending. So what could they do to convince fans that they're invested the way that you are? We'll talk about that on the other side. I want to continue hearing from you via the mic drop feature as well on 101 ESPN.
Alex Ferrario with you to talk about my insurance agent, Tracy Bibb, who her and her team have been taking care of the Ferrario family for the last 5 years now with our insurance coverage. And Tracy truly is the best in terms of taking care of us, making sure we are up to date and aware of what falls underneath our umbrella. But the part I love about it with Tracy is she is always available for you. We've all had this at some point of an insurance agent, and if something happens, whether it's a flooding in the basement or a fender bender on the side of the road, you call the agent number, nobody answers, you're sitting on hold, and next thing you know, you don't get a response for a week later. That is not the case with Tracy. She is always available for you, and she preaches. Her team preaches. It's not a matter of if something happens, it's when it happens, and when it does, you want to know that you have the comfort of that person there to help you, and that's what Tracy and her team are. You give them a call today, tell them Alex Ferrario sent you, and they'll give you a free non-committal quote of switching over to the Bibb agency, even cancel your insurance agent for you. 314-328-4260. Again, Tracy Bibb, 314-328-4260. It's no fib. You're always in great hands with the Bibb.
Terry Hendricks here with a Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. The Cardinals dropped game one of their three-game set to the Phillies last night, 5-3 in extras. There you are, back in action tonight. 6:45 will be first pitch. Sonny Gray's on the mound making his Cardinals debut, and he'll go up against Zach Wheeler tonight. Again, 6:45 will be first pitch. And the Blues back in action tomorrow as they'll take on the Chicago Blackhawks. We'll have pregame coverage starting at 6 o'clock with Alex Ferrario and Joey Vitale. Then Joey will join Chris Kerber for Puck Drop at 7. The Sports Center update was driven by Johnny Londoff. Find your road shop 24/7 at londoff.com, londoffautoPlex.com. Are you kidding me?
Alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK, we're talking about the Cardinals' attendance from last night. It was announced at 32,600. That would have been the third smallest crowd at Busch Stadium last year. The smallest crowd was just over 32,450. So you had 150 extra people that paid for tickets yesterday that wouldn't have paid for them a year ago. So that's where we're at when it comes to attendance. That's why this conversation is taking place right now.
It was so bad. Bally's had a tight shot. And if they would have zoomed out, you would have seen lower bowl section seats empty.
And a reminder, announced attendance is not the people that came through the gates. They don't announce that. They're never going to tell you how many people were actually at the game. If they did, yesterday would have been like 20,000.
Yeah, that number would be a lot worse.
That was at least half empty stadium yesterday. What they tell you is the number of tickets that were sold to that game. And frankly, that's what they care about because that's how they get their revenue. They care a lot about the gate revenues, and that's what they announce when you go to the games. So, Alex, there are a lot of disclaimers here. Yesterday was the eclipse. I get it. A lot of people went down there for that.
You celebrated it.
We sure did. Kara was at home. Baby boy, they went outside. They both had the glasses on. Then baby boy took his glasses off. She's like, oh, this is why you can't have them look up the sun. I get it now. So it was a whole thing. But,
Baby boys, I started bleeding. It was a bad thing.
People have stuff going on. It's still the school year. It's the middle of April. It's a Monday night. Like, I get it, man. People are busy, and it's expensive to go to a baseball game. Forget the fact that you could get in for like $5 yesterday. You got to pay for parking, although there are some free parking spots over there. T-Bone, you and I have certainly explored those free parking spots, but you got to get there early to be able to do that, and that's a hassle when you got a kid coming with you.
And then you got to walk back there late at night, which is never a fun thing.
Like, there's a lot. I'm
upset that we got to be there so early now.
I don't blame anybody for not going to the games. You don't need to go if you don't want to go. That's fine. But here in St. Louis, people go to games. That's just like a part of our culture. And so when they don't, it's a story, man. It's a story for the Cardinals. It's a story for the city. So we're talking about this, and we got a lot of mic drop features on the 101 ESPN app. What could the Cardinals do that would get you to buy back in? What could they do to convince you, like, okay, it is worth my time, my effort, my investment, both emotionally and monetarily, to buy back into this club? And Alex, I don't think there's anything they can do in 2024 that would do that.
Nope.
Other than just win. Winning would get people to buy back in because emotionally then you become invested.
I think you could start the healing process this season, but it's not going to change anything for people.
T-Bone, you brought something up during the break that I found to be interesting. You mentioned how Stalter has said that last year for the pitching staff was a snowball effect. It wasn't just about last year. It's something that had been trending in that direction for the past 5 years. You think the same might be true for attendance. Why is that?
I think it's the same because I think what Cardinals fans have been saying is what we've heard a lot of is they want to see, whether it be payroll increase, they want to see a change in the way the Cardinals operate. That's kind of the theme that we've been hearing. Well, when you can look back, and I totally agree with the sentiment of the pitching wasn't just a blip on the radar, it's been a snowball effect that has been building probably since 2020. And it finally hit last year. And I think that was the moment. And I thought Mo said all the right things. In fact, it got us so excited for the offseason, BK, that we had our hearts ripped out. It's like another breakup.
You guys get sold really easy, don't you?
But I think what it is I think Cardinals fans, the Cardinals fans, we agree, did not like that 2019 team that got to the NLCS, right? That team wasn't supposed to be there. They got there, and they got shellacked and got swept by the Washington Nationals. 2020 hits, that roster was not good. 2021 hits, they need a 19-game winning streak to make the playoffs. 2022, that team was fun because they had Albert Pujols, the guy that everybody grew up watching here in St. Louis, come back and carry that team to the postseason in the second half. And then 23 hits. I think what people have been kind of having the snowball effect of is Cardinals have to operate differently. The Cardinals have to operate differently. Whether that is you think they need to, you're not upset with payroll, you just think they need to spend that money wiser, or you're actually upset with payroll and want to see them spend more. Either way, I think what you are starting to see is the snowball effect of people finally saw 2023 and said, all right, there it is. This is the moment things are going to change. Mo has said it publicly. They're going to get pitching. The philosophy is going to change. They're going to take a deep look. And then you know how they respond in the offseason? They sign one legitimate starter in Sonny Gray. They signed two back-end guys in Lynn and Gibson, and they focus all on this. What was the issue in 2023? It is we needed leadership. That's the response by the Cardinals. And they built a team for, let's be honest, and I think this was a thing that people have been talking about, and I've said this as well, it does feel like Mo is behind the times in how he is building teams. And that's what the rotation looks like. I would say that the younger hitters are more of a modern development, but the pitching is old school. It's pitch to contact still. They said they were going to change that. They didn't really in the rotation. The bullpen's got more swing and miss. So you come off of a 91-loss season. Fan base is at its highest in terms of angst ever, thinking, okay, finally they had that aha moment, and it wasn't an aha moment. The aha moment was leadership was our issue. And some fans might buy into that, but I think a lot of people are, and we've heard it all here, a lot of people are either A, not happy with the offense, or B, have said there wasn't a fun, exciting move in the offseason, or C, it is the pitching just isn't good enough. I think this has been a snowballing that has been building, and the Cardinals had their moment to escape it this offseason, and they said, no, hey, let's do the bare minimum to fix this team.
Sounds like you have a grudge problem like I have a grudge problem.
I've been public of how much I hated this offseason.
For somebody who has a tone problem, you'll understand this.
Yeah.
I think the first step for you to try and heal this, if you're the Cardinals, is Mo needs to fix his tone when speaking to the fans. You can't keep pulling the same statement publicly of, well, we just feel like that if we get in, anything can happen. Meanwhile, there are other general managers around Major League Baseball that are very adamant about how we want to win. We are building a roster to win. And I understand most comments on opening day with the opening drive of, well, of course we want to win, but we're not at the same position as other teams to go out there and spend like they want to win. Then you need to change your mindset in terms of how creative can you get? We talked about how frustrating that Chris Sale trade was, to where it's like, how can you not be this creative? You see other teams make trades in the offseason because they realize we've got something where we feel like we can win right now. Let's be aggressive. And if you don't feel that way, if you feel like, oh, we're still feeling this team out, then be upfront with it. But you can't keep pulling the same statement to a fan base that gets frustrated offseason after offseason after offseason, where you put the leash on them and you say, hey, we're going to spend more this offseason, and then you yank the leash back and say, yeah, but it's going to one pitcher and deferred money. You're going to have to change your tone about how you're running this team and then back it up with actions.
Can I do the thing where it's like BK has a tone issue probably here? Do people care about that tone if they're winning? Do people care about their offseason if they're winning? And I'm not talking about just in 2024. I'm just talking about, like, if they had done more winning over the past few years.
Well, what are you classifying as winning?
Like 90 wins.
They don't
getting
care.
to the play. You think?
I think everything I'm hearing here
doesn't matter.
Is it's all about building 4 championships. And when you haven't won a playoff series since 19, why would I listen to what Mo's saying and think differently?
Agreed. But let's say, like, they've had some modicum of success. Like, they have failed spectacularly in the playoffs since 2019. It's been a disaster once they get there. It's one game and boom. It's going up against the Phillies, having a win ready to go for you, and imploding in the 9th inning when you have your best pitcher on the mound who jammed his thumb in the previous appearance when it was just a nonsensical, should have even been in the game kind of situation. Right?
Manager problem.
No. I understood why they did it there, but it just, like, the worst case scenario happened, and it led to a horrific loss at home in the playoffs. Like, I understand all of that. But if they'd done a little bit of winning in the last few years, I'm not telling you that they're drawing in 40,000 last night. They're not. But I do wonder if the conversation feels a little different right now. Because instead of what we're talking about, which is, whoo, boy, this feels bad. Like, our text line is lighting up right now. Our mic drops, it's all the same stuff of people saying, like, and it's a million different things, right? People are mad about concession prices. They're mad about parking prices. And I'm not blaming anybody. I get it. It's too hard to get down there and then to get back home. It takes too much time and investment. You got kids, the whole thing. The team's not very good. Mo is arrogant, shouldn't have extended Ollie Marmol. You don't do enough winning. Like, there are a million different explanations, not excuses, explanations from people as to why you're not going to the games right now. And I get all of them. But I think, this is my hypothesis, if they were doing more winning, you set all of that stuff aside. You say, let's go to a Cardinals game.
But it's hard to, I agree, but it's hard to look at it and say if they're doing more winning, we'd feel different. If they're doing more winning, Mo's doing something different to put a winning roster on the field.
But what if it was...
The roster he's put together hasn't been. It doesn't feel like a winning roster.
I think the issue, and we've talked about it, and I think they're the best fans of baseball for a reason, is they know the team's always a piece short. So even if you are winning 90 games and you're getting into the playoffs,
I did not think you were
guys.
When you said a piece short.
Everybody knew going into 2022 that team, like, even though they were fun with Albert Pujols, nobody believed they were a World Series contender. Yeah. Man, they won 90 games and they were in the worst division in baseball.
And you were going to watch
their
Pujols.
pitching. Guys, they started Quintana in game 1. Quintana is not an ace.
I convinced myself he was.
And fair. You know what?
You did.
I convinced myself Wade LeBlanc was the answer for the St. Louis Cardinals that year they brought him in.
It was a bad year for you, too.
It was. But I think the fan base realized, hey, they are a player short all the time. And I think the other thing, too, is, and I don't know if you feel this way, Mo feels too predictable. And that feels like a bad thing. And the reason I say that is every time we had segments in the offseason, every time we get close to the deadline, we start talking about names. Me and BK, we got excited like Blake Snell. God, wouldn't he be great? And all the texts are, and Alex had the same thought was, they're not going to do that. Well, that's not the Cardinals. They're not going to do that. Same with the trade deadline. You know, Jesus Luzardo is going to be available this offseason. Guys, there is going to be a massive bidding war for Jesus Luzardo from every contender that's out there, and we will talk about it. We will. We got to have content for our show. The fan base is going to go, guys, they're not going to go get him. What the hell are you doing? I mean, it's too predictable. It's not like, and look, Army didn't get the deal done this offseason. I thought there was no way in hell he could even pull off a Krug trade. He had the deal done and Krug nixed it. Yeah. Like, Army still has a little bit of that unpredictability to him, even though and that fan base is upset with him. We can talk about him another day.
But that's why
Mo's too predictable.
But that's why every offseason we are on this could happen for the Blues. And BK gets mad at me, but for the last 5 years, it's been, that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. I get called that I'm so negative about the Cardinals and so positive about the Blues. I mean, the Blues have given you examples of they pull off stuff that I didn't think was possible.
I just set this
aside. I know, Goldie and Arenado, they pulled those off.
Same thing.
That's 2 of them. But then
the difference is the Blues won a title. That's it. More recently. The only difference between how we feel about the Blues right now and how we feel about the Cardinals is that the Blues won the Cup in 2019. The Cardinals haven't won a World Series
it's also
in more
because
than a
the person that's leading that roster is upfront and honest about it. Where the other one is, well, we feel like if we could get in.
People are turning on Army right now, too, though, because they're frustrated about the way that it's going right now.
Yeah, he got booed bad.
As much as we talk about how the Blues pull off all of this stuff, like, man, it's not all that dissimilar.
That's fine, but every offseason, we have the same conversation about, oh, you need to fix this area and go make this move.
Like, we've had the same conversations about the Blues. They don't happen either.
Don't get me started on that one.
Except for Ryan O'Reilly. Like, that's the most recent time. What's the most recent time since then that they pulled off something where you're like, whoa, there's Army doing it again.
Buchnevich?
Yeah, I mean,
but I don't know if he was. I don't know if at the time when he was acquired, you thought he was.
Well, but you traded Sammy Blay for it. But fine. But even the Travis
traded a broken down Harrison Bader for Jordan Montgomery.
Okay, but we talk about creativity. Like again, what T-Bone referenced, like that's very true. The Travis Sanheim deal is one of those. Now, yeah, it got nixed, but like he pulled the deal off. I can't say the same thing about Mo.
And I think
pulling off trades.
The Travis Sanheim deal was the Chris Sale deal this offseason.
This is where I think we disagree. Is Goldie and Arenado? You bring those up. Those felt like Mo moves.
And you were gifted those two.
Yeah, it was the Colorado has no trade leverage, and it was, oh, hey, you can probably go get Nolan Arenado for a bag of balls.
And that was
Arenado said, trade me to the Dodgers or the Cardinals, and we're not trading you to the Dodgers, so congrats, you're a Cardinal.
Sweet. So now here's the other things that he's done since then. He went out and got Wilson Contreras. Like, I'm not telling you all of these things have worked out.
People were complaining about last season.
Oh, you want to talk about some moves that didn't work out? I can show you a litany of Blues moves where it didn't work out.
I got a list of Mo moves for you.
Justin Falk, Torrey Krug. You want to keep going down the list?
Dexter Fowler, Mike Leake, Jose Quintana. We could keep going.
It's the same stuff. And that's why both teams are in the same place.
Damn it, I hate that so much! Come on!
This is what's so frustrating. There's not a lot to be excited about right now. But God bless the Battlehawks. Thank God. City games are fun as hell to go to right now.
They can't win. They just tie.
All they do is tie. They can't score goals. What is happening in St. Louis?
We're going to talk about some Hornets that are taking place in the midst of all of this next year on 101 ESPN. trillions of cicadas will emerge across several United States this spring in an event that one expert has dubbed the Cicada-geddon.
Oh, come on. It's cicada apocalypse.
There will also be something else that's taking place during this experience, Alex.
There's more. The cicadas are already enough, man.
Not only will more cicadas than expected take place this year, some of them will be called zombie cicadas that are infected by sexually transmitted fungus that makes them hypersexualized as well.
Hold up.
Yep.
So there are STD flying cicadas that are going to be
hypersexualized.
That are going to be sexually motivated with other cicadas.
Oh yeah, which is great.
So I could really get bleeped by a cicada this season
potentially.
Wow, I've already
wanted to make everybody aware of this. I feel like this is my PSA for all of you out there. Alex, how does your wife do with the cicadas or June bugs?
She doesn't like them. I can't do cicadas. Like, I cannot do, like, she's to the point where she's like, I don't do bugs, so, like, bugs freak her out. I get pictures of spiders at 9 o'clock at night when I'm doing blues with a cup over them saying, take care of this when you get home. I literally bought a salt gun so she could start taking care of this in the house, and she still hasn't done it.
Smart.
But the cicadas are a different level for me, and they're stupid. They don't do anything, although now they got STDs flying around. They don't do anything, but they're loud and blind and fly into your face. I don't do cicadas. Like, to the point where I told my wife, we will not be exiting the house during cicada season. We will be indoors for the longest time.
I don't mind them until they, like what you said, they come and hit me in the face while I'm on my walk, or they land on me. Then I freak the you-know-what out. I don't mind the sound. It doesn't bother me. I find it kind of relaxing.
It's loud, actually. I don't mind the sound.
I find it a little relaxing on a nice summer night. You got a nice cold beer in your hand, and you can just hear the cicadas.
Until a cicada falls into the beer.
And then when it hits you in the face and you freak out and you spill your beer, then it sucks.
My dad used to torment me. He would go pick them up, like live ones, by their wings.
My wife would divorce me if I did this.
Probably.
I'm not kidding.
Mine would do that too, to me, honestly.
I don't blame her,
like, not as an overreaction. Like, that would be her initial reaction is we need to get a divorce.
And when I found out, I'd go care. That was just.
Yeah. My dad would pin me in the corner of our house.
Oh, jeez.
He would catch me while I'm in the bathroom, and when I come out, he would have the cicada, and he would hold it in my face, buzzing.
Dude.
This is why I have irritable bowel syndrome, because of cicadas. This is why. This is why I have ished myself multiple times.
And I think it's why you're angry all the time. Well, I don't blame you.
Last night was the first night where we heard of the June bugs around our house. We've got some June bug problems in the St. Charles area. If anybody could fix that, that'd be wonderful for me specifically.
I know how to.
Please.
It'll cost you.
Well, I already pay for your company.
Yeah, you do. Well, you better check that out then. Make sure you ask about it. Yikes.
So, my wife is deathly, and I mean deathly, afraid of bugs. Just in general. We have this, like, tennis racket style buzz zapper where she will take it to her car around this time of the year, Alex, and just flail it wildly as she's coming inside to make sure that she...
I whip my zapper back and forth. I whip my zapper back and forth.
To make sure that they don't hit her. Last year, at the end of the season, she was coming back inside, and there's June bugs out there, the cicadas as well. And one gets inside of our house, and she is screaming, Brandon, 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 Brandon. Like, hold on, what's going on?
I don't blame her. I'd be screaming like that, too.
Kill it, kill it, kill it. And I go over there, and she has handed me at this point her
zapper gun?
Zapper.
I wear my zapper back.
I'm like flailing in the wind trying to get this thing. I was her hero on that day because I zapped it right back out of the door. So that's my greatest accomplishment.
9 months later, Luca was born.
That's right.
Zuka.
Zuka. It's got like the zapper in my head right now. Just how this goes. My backyard is filled with like trees. Like, we have common ground behind us, and it's just trees and leaves. And seriously, I will not be exiting my house for how long this lasts about like a month or two. I will not be leaving my house.
It's going to be great. Can't wait for it. He's Alex. That's T-Bone on BK. Coming up in about 15 minutes or so, what would an offseason overhaul look like for the Blues? Don't worry, they ain't going to do any of this. They're just like the Cardinals.
Oh, but Armstrong will.
Hey, you want to talk
no.
about somebody that's actually exciting to watch play baseball? Masyn Winn. We'll talk about him next here on 101 ESPN.
Alex Ferrario, Brandon Kiley with you. Look, over this March Madness that we had, I placed tons of parlay bets on our Circa Sports Illinois app. Did it go my way? Not so much, because I'm not very good at this. But it's Masters season, guys. And look, we talk so much about Circa Sports and the great odds that they offer you of how you're bringing more money in. And let me show you an example of this. So I'm big on the Rory McIlroy train of winning the Masters this year. Of course I am. I want the money.
Sports better.
Wow, that was unnecessary. But look, with Circa Sports, I'm looking at their app right now, and for him to win the Masters plus 1350. If I go over to the DraftKings or the FanDuel app, that's plus 1100. Plus 1350 if I bet BK on Circa Sports for Rory McIlroy to win the Masters. That's how I bring in more money.
Yeah, when you win, you're going to win more over on the Circa Sports app. John Rahm is the guy that I'm going to be backing 13-1 over on the Circa app. The other apps that you could go over to, you can check it yourself. 11-1 for John Rahm. I'm going to win the most money possible. I'm going to be betting on the Circa Sports app. You can do the same thing by downloading the app today. Circa Sports in Illinois. Download it. You will be winning the most money possible with me and with Alex. If you or someone you know may have a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER or text ILGAMB to 833-234.
Double play ball, maybe. Flip to second one. Fireball to first is in time.
I don't think he's ever lacked confidence defensively. He knows exactly who he is out there. He's done a nice job, man. I mean, this kid's sliding all over the field, making unbelievable plays, finishing that double play with his arm strength. It's impressive to watch him every day because he's under control, but it's explosive.
Great play, Masyn. Strong throw, and Goldie held the bag. Unbelievable play at first. The Phillies might take a look at this, but Masyn Winn with an incredible stab up the middle.
We played some fantastic defense out there. Some amazing plays from Goldie at first and Winn at short.
He did. Ground ball, base
Hoffman went back to the well one too many times.
That's what it sounded like last night on Bally Sports Midwest. Masyn Winn is making a believer out of me. Alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK. You got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. He's hitting .333. He's slugging .400 so far, Alex. He's been an above-average hitter so far this season. He's not going to have a ton of power. That's not his game. Nobody's expecting him to. But when he gets on the bases, he's a pretty good base runner. He's got a lot of speed to him. And defensively, he's better than I expected. Like, he is getting to balls that I wasn't sure he would, and he's making seemingly every routine play so far this year, along with making some spectacular plays as we saw last night. Alex, when you think about what your preseason expectations were for Masyn Winn relative to where we are today, how much has changed for you and your thoughts of what Masyn Winn's early ceiling could be?
I mean, it's shifted a little bit because I didn't expect his offense to be here right away. I didn't think he was going to be Victor Scott struggling, but I thought he was going to struggle a little bit. That's changed in the sense of, man, I don't feel like it's an automatic out when Masyn Winn steps to the plate. We talked earlier about how when Nolan Arenado stepped up last night with that opportunity to win the game, we were all thinking like, this isn't going to happen. There's no way. When Masyn Winn stepped up for his at-bat, I'm like, oh, he's getting a hit here.
He's got the it factor.
Yeah.
That's a really good point on it.
The one for me, and I told you guys this in the office, like I felt like this when we saw him last year, but after watching him at the beginning of the season, Masyn Winn is Tony Womack to me. And BK brought up a great point, which is very rare, but I think we all remember Tony Womack differently because Tony Womack was not good offensively until he got to the Cardinals, and that 1 year he was awesome. But I remember that because he was a leadoff hitter. Every single time he felt like he was going to come through with the big hit, he was going to get on base, and he was going to be elite on the base paths. That's what Masyn Winn is to me right now. Now, I don't think it's just going to be a one-year sample size. I think you're seeing that in his first full season, second season in the big leagues, he's already adjusted to major league pitching. Imagine what this looks like the more reps he gets. So my mindset has shifted in the sense of I don't think this dude is just an 8 or a 9-hole hitter. I think this guy could be an impactful player overall for the Cardinals.
Yeah, I would say offensively, he by far is exceeding what I thought was going to be from him this season, because you're right, I didn't expect like the Victor Scott struggles, but I thought he'd be like a 200, 210 hitter and be a guy that was, for the most part, an automatic out. And right now he looks just scrappy at the plate. You know, he reminds me, you brought up Tony Womack, I brought up David Eckstein, John Jay, those guys that were never really hit for power, but were like, at the time, the typical leadoff hitter that was just slap singles. And that's what he's doing right now. And he looks comfortable at the plate. Defensively, he's been a little bit better than I expected, but I figured he had a chance to win a Gold Glove. So I've been really impressed overall from what we've seen from Masyn Winn's game. I did not think he'd get to this point early on, and I'll be curious to see what adjustments Major League Pitching makes for him, you know, because he had a whole offseason to adjust to that first month that he got to see. Once we start to see that adjustment period come for the Major League pitchers, I'll be curious to see how Masyn Winn responds to it. I think he'll be fine, but I'll be curious to see what that looks like.
We should also give credit to Paul Goldschmidt for making Masyn Winn look good at defense at shortstop, too, because that dude has made some incredible picks at first base for Masyn Winn.
But I saw somebody on the text line, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. Guys, Winn would have 20 errors if not for Paul Goldschmidt. I mean, some of that is just because he's willing to try stuff. Like some of the plays that he's making, throwing it over to first, he's making in part because he knows Paul Goldschmidt is over there. That's something worth noting. But also because, like, he can get to balls that other guys can't. I have also been impressed. There have been a couple of times where I'm like, he's going to make a tough throw here. He's going to make a tough throw here. This could be an error, and it could lead to extra base. And he doesn't make it. Like, I think Masyn Winn has been really good. And by the way, one of the reasons why you shouldn't trust all of the defensive metrics early on in the season, and I'm saying this as a numbers nerd, he's a -3 when it comes to outs above average so far this year. There is, in no way, shape, or form, could anybody convince me that Masyn Winn has been a net negative defensively for the Cardinals this year. That's complete nonsense. And so whatever the numbers are getting to there, they're just flat out wrong. We've watched the games. Alex, I know you watched the Cardinals games as well. Go out there, watch him play baseball, and then leave telling me that he's a bad defender. He's a net negative for you at shortstop. You can't do it. It doesn't. It's just nonsense.
I told you had one more tone, and that was going to ruin it, so I'm done for the rest of the show.
Great. Another one of those days.
Can he be for the Cardinals what Edgar Renteria was for the Cardinals?
I don't think so, because I don't think he's got the power that Edgar Renteria had.
Renteria had somewhere between 10 and 15 home runs basically every season in St. Louis.
I don't know if he gets that. And like I said, maybe I'm just misrepresenting what Renteria was. in the sense of being an impactful player at the leadoff spot, I want to see if Masyn Winn can do it. You already tried Victor Scott there. Why not see? And I know Brendan Donovan's been playing awesome, but I think you got to shift the top of that lineup anyway to find a better 2-hole hitter, maybe find a better 3-hole hitter. But I think in the sense of Edgar Renteria bringing that pizzazz to the team, I absolutely think Masyn Winn.
Clutchability.
Yeah, I mean, in the plays defensively, the speed that he had, like I said, I just don't think the power's there for Edgar Renteria. I'm not sure if he even gets to 10 home runs, but everything else, yeah, I think he absolutely could be Renteria.
I think eventually he gets there.
That's what I was going to say. I think at some point he might be able to get to Renteria. This year,
Renteria's
no.
first 3 seasons in the big league, started to cut you off there, T-Bone. 5, 4, and 3 home runs. And then got to St. Louis 11, 16, 10, 11, so on and so forth. But his first 3 seasons in the big leagues, he was not a power hitter, and he eventually grew into that. He started out very much, I'm going to hit for average, and then eventually, and it wasn't big-time power, but a little bit of pop started to show up as he continued along.
Yeah, I don't think it would be reasonable to expect him to have that 10 to 15 home run power this season. I think give him a couple years to kind of get comfortable here at the big league level, focus on his defense, and then over time he can kind of start to shift the focus over to the offensive end, kind of like what Yachty did when he started up in his career, focused on defense and then moved to becoming a all-around complete player. I think that's probably the expectation for Masyn Winn. And look, I think he's still probably going to more than likely end up being a 250 hitter this season. I'd be shocked if he's near 300. I think at some point pitching's going to make an adjustment to him. I still think there are a little bit of holes in his swing, but we'll see. The ceiling is definitely raised from what we've seen early on for this season.
So the other thing that I wanted to get to here is another young player that's been really exciting to watch so far. Guys, Ivan Herrera needs to be in the lineup as often as possible. And that doesn't mean every day, because eventually you're going to have 2 catchers on the roster, and I do understand it is difficult to be able to get both of those catchers into the lineup as a designated hitter and the catcher. There are consequences to that of losing your designated hitter spot if you were to have to replace the catcher at some point in the game. So I get why you can't do that every single day. But Ivan Herrera should be in the lineup pretty close to it right now. That guy right now is, I mean, maybe your best hitter all around. He's got power. We're seeing that early on so far this year. He's tied with Nolan Gorman for the most home runs and Wilson Contreras for the most home runs on the season on the team. And he hits for average. And when he goes up to the plate, I feel like he has an idea of like what the situation calls for. He also has 2 sac flies so far this year. They brought him in a few days ago when they needed that sac fly. He pinch hit, went and gave them exactly what they needed in that spot. Ivan Herrera's just a good baseball player, man. And oh, by the way, behind the plate, I think he's doing a good job. Get that guy in there as often as humanly possible. Right now, while Contreras is still kind of nursing back that hand, I'm fine with Contreras being the DH for the foreseeable future until he's 100% ready to go back behind the plate again.
That's the part for me that I think is most noticeable with Ivan Herrera, because last year in this scenario, Wilson Contreras would have been back by now, and I think you would have brought him back too soon. Ivan Herrera, like they've mentioned 2 separate times of like he's in the lineup, and then they're like, no, we probably late scratch just so he gets back to 100% health. That's what Ivan Herrera offers you. He offers you the ability to slow play it with Wilson Contreras, which, I mean, I'm not an advocate for. I want Wilson back in there, but I trust the player if he's saying I'm ready, I'm not 100% yet. Good, we've got Ivan Herrera. Get 100% before you come back into the lineup, because as we're seeing, we need your bat in this lineup if you're going to return. We can't have you not at 100%. So take your time with it. I will say the bad side of this is, man, if Ivan Herrera plays this well, when you try and make trades, he's going to be the guy that other teams are saying, you got to give us this guy. And the Cardinals are going to have to decide, do we do it? Do we not do it? Because if you get to the point where you want to be aggressive.
Make trades, we know that.
Oh, welcome aboard, man.
I'm glad you finally came aboard.
Man, it took you a while to get here, but
I think when you look at Herrera, I think you have to get him in the lineup. And that's not just with the Contreras injury. Like, that happens to be in the conversation right now, because he should be in the lineup when Contreras is 100%. And I'm not saying catching, I'm saying DHing. Because you brought up Alec Burleson. Yeah, he should have an expected batting average 280. He doesn't. The results aren't there. So, and that's been a theme for Burleson. And I'm like, that's a harsh reality of it, but you got to go by the results. And while the offense is kind of just struggling along right now through the first 10, 11 games, man, they got to take advantage while the pitching's pitching well, because I'm not sure it's going to hold up. I think you've got to get Herrera in the lineup. I think he has got to be the DH over Alec Burleson and, well, Carpenter's hurt, over Alec Burleson while right-handed pitching is going on the mound, because you're not going to bench Arenado, you're not going to bench Paul Goldschmidt, you're not going to bench Nolan Gorman. So how do you get a Herrera's bat into the lineup and kind of move it up? You put him at the DH spot, and you probably hit him fifth right now is I think where you would put him.
He's Tanner Hendrickson. That's Alex Ferrario. I'm Brandon Kiley. Coming up next, would an offseason overhaul look like trading a potential Vezina Trophy candidate in net? We'll talk about that next here on 101 ESPN. Not my idea. Hey, it's BK. I got to tell you about my friends over at Victory Men's Health. They can help you out. Did you wake up today and say to yourself, man, I just don't have the same energy that I once did. I don't feel like I did in my 20s or in my early 30s. Well, they can help you out. They can unlock your inner champion at Victory Men's Health. This isn't your typical low testosterone place that you're going to go to. You walk in, you feel like you're going to the hospital, white walls, dimly lit. That's not the feel. That's not the vibe when you walk into Victory Men's Health. You can check it out yourself. Go to one of their 4 great locations across the St. Louis metro area. They've got one in O'Fallon, Illinois, another in O'Fallon, Missouri, and then Town and Country. And their newest location is in Sunset Hills, Missouri. Go to one of those 4 or check them out today at Victory Men's Health. Maybe low testosterone is not the issue for you. Maybe you're looking for a way to get help with some of your weight loss goals for this upcoming year. If that's the case, go over to victorymenshealth.com. They've got a bunch of different ways that they can help you out. See all that they have to offer at Victory Men's Health and at victorymenshealth.com. Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. You got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. So as I was driving in today, Alex was listening to the 32 Thoughts podcast with Elliot Friedman and Jeff Merrick, 2 of our favorite insiders in the NHL. And they had a piece of the podcast where they were talking about the Blues. And I'm not going to make you listen to the whole thing, but they basically said, ooh, yikes. Losing to the Sharks, not a great sign for the current or future of the St. Louis Blues. So they got into what it means in the big picture, Alex. And the first thing that they discussed was Elliot Friedman on the overhaul that Doug Armstrong is trying to accomplish in the offseason in just how deep that could go. Here's Elliot Friedman on the 32 Thoughts podcast.
You can tell he wants to perform some surgery, and not minor surgery. We're not talking about like something small here, like a tummy tuck or, like something like that. We're talking about some major surgery, replacing a limb, something like that. Yes, he clearly has the itch to do something here. You can't go winless against a team like San Jose and think you're going in the right direction.
So that was the starting point. And then it got to a place that was really going to frustrate Alex. Do you trade your Vezina Trophy candidate goalie?
Binnington has had a great year. He's been really good.
Yeah. Hellebuck should probably win the Vezina. Markstrom's going to be in the conversation, but Jordan Binnington's had a tremendous year.
Get him, Jeff. So he's got a no-trade clause that goes to a partial no trade. I think it's 2/3 of the league next year. To me, I would be curious about what Armstrong will do here.
Wow.
But it might be your best chance to get something.
Jeff had the calm response to that, because in my car while I'm driving listening, and I'm like, no, you don't freaking trade this guy. I understand where Friedman's coming from, though. Like, going into this offseason, everybody's going to need goaltending. I mean, you're going to see multiple teams lose out in the playoffs because their goaltender's not good enough. And I think there are 3 guys that are going to be for sale, 2 guys that are going to be for sale that teams are going to be calling about and will give up a massive haul for. Jacob Markstrom and Jussi Saros. And I do believe both of those guys are going to get moved this offseason because the other teams, Calgary's kind of in his show right now, but Nashville has 2 guys in the minors that are ready to take that next step. I don't think the Blues are there yet. Joel Hofer is good. Joel Hofer is not ready to play 45 to 50 games in the regular season and keep you competitive. Now, if the Blues think this timeline's longer, maybe you consider Jordan Binnington, because by the time you get better, are you on the back end of Jordan Binnington? Something's going to happen, though. You don't start here. There are other areas that I start for this massive surgery that you're talking about. But hearing Friedman talk about that, and then do yourself a favor and go read Steve Ellis's Q&A with, Matt Larkin's Q&A with Barry Trotz for the Nashville Predators, because Barry Trotz walked Matt Larkin through of the massive surgery that Nashville did this past offseason. They traded away Matt Duchene and Ryan Johansson, 2 pieces that were supposed to be part of their success, and they traded those guys to bring in Ryan O'Reilly and Luke Schenn, and they've turned it around. I don't know where the massive surgery starts. Personally,
not with Jordan Binnington.
Not with Binnington. Binnington makes you a worse team next year. But Binnington also might bring you the best return of anybody on your roster.
I'm skeptical of that. I want to get to that here in just a second. But they got rid of those guys in Nashville because they were part of the problem for the culture.
Mm-hmm.
Jordan Binnington is not a part of the problem for the culture here in St. Louis. In fact, it's quite the opposite.
To the culture.
I used to wonder, like, man, is there a screw loose here? Like, what's going on with Jordan Binnington? He got some pushback for getting in that fight the other night. I thought it was totally justified. His reaction to everything that took place on the ice.
Absolutely.
That was not him instigating an opposing player. That was him reacting to something that took place right in front of him.
Standing up for his teammates, which nobody does on this team.
That was more than reasonable in response to what took place on the ice. Again, right in front of him. And honestly, he got drawn into that fight more than he started that fight. There were times years ago, last year, the year prior, where he was the guy that was starting it. And I did feel like it got to a place, and frankly, I think that Doug Armstrong felt that it got to a place where it was unnecessary, and it was causing his game to suffer as a result. And we've seen this year, I think this is the best version of Jordan Binnington on a consistent basis that we've seen in his career, and it's happened while he's been calm, quiet, and it seems like whether it's on the ice or off the ice, just playing armchair psychologist here, seems like he's in a really good place mentally, man. Really does. I don't want to trade that guy. I don't want to trade that guy from my locker room when I feel like the locker room might have some issues. That guy's a part of the solution, not a part of the problem.
Well, listen to his comments, too. When Berube was fired, he basically called out his teammates saying, like, hey, if you don't want to be here, then get out of here. We don't need you on this team right now. He is part of the solution. It's funny you say that because I don't know if people watched it. After he threw that punch at Ross Johnston, he was sitting in between the net,
breathing,
and his eyes were closed. Yeah, like he was calming himself down. Yes. That is a changed Jordan Binnington. And look, 4 years from now, I don't know what Binnington looks like. Binnington might be Jake Allen, to where he's good, but is he good enough to win you a cup? Probably not. Address it then, because between now And I would say that fourth year where he's a free agent, you need to figure out how to get winning back into your roster, and Binnington provides it.
So the other thing, to your point on Binnington being able to provide what you're missing, I don't know that that's true, man. Like, when we look at the history of trading goaltenders in this league, first of all, there's not much of it. Trades rarely happen in net. And second of all, when they are traded, the return is not what you would expect. I can't explain why that is, because it's the position that teams have the most trouble being able to develop, being able to get once they, like, when you're good, when you get good, New Jersey, for example, one of the last pieces that a lot of teams will put into the mix is their goalie. They fix that glass sometimes. Unfortunately, for some of them, they just never find the guy. Hell, look at Edmonton. Like, it's really hard to find the right goalie. And so you would think, okay, much like a closer in Major League Baseball, you don't want to spend big money to bring them in, but I'm willing to trade big assets at the deadline if it's the final piece to a potential World Series contending team. But for whatever reason, teams don't do it.
Yeah.
And I don't know why that is. I think that we would be underwhelmed by the return that the Blues are able to get for a 30-year-old Jordan Binnington with a partial no-trade clause this offseason. Instead, I would start elsewhere, man. I'm looking towards that defensive core, trying again with one of Justin Falk or Torrey Krug. I'm looking at your forward group right now. I'm thinking about what the future holds for Pavel Buchnevich and for Jordan Kyrou. These are the moves that I'm looking to make. The guy in net, maybe that's something I consider a year from now, 2 years from now, but right now it's not even on like my list of potential moves for the Blues this offseason.
I'm 100% with you. I'm looking at so many different places. I'm actually going to the forward spot first and seeing what's out there for a Kyrou, for a Buchnevich. Then I'm going to the defense, because I think frankly what defense is you're just shedding salary and you'll just make it up elsewhere. I think you do need to find some type of hockey trade, and those are the two guys that probably warrant the return. I will be interested, though, because you're right. We've talked about this before. The return on goaltenders has not been good in the past. Like, there are the only one that I can think of is Roberto Luongo, who was 28 when he was traded to Vancouver, and coming to Florida was 31-year-old Todd Bertuzzi, who was coming off of a 75-point season. That's the only one that I can think of. I wonder if that changes this offseason, though, because it's rare that you say Saros, Jacob Markstrom, two guys that'll be in Vezina conversations or have been, become available. Does that change? Do teams get desperate enough, especially with the cap rising? That will be intriguing. But if you're gonna conduct massive surgery on this team, there are so many areas on this body that need to be fixed before I get to the heart of it all in Jordan Binnington. And that's the one that I'm not touching right now.
Yeah, I just think there are so many other places. And, like, let's be honest, man, Jordan Kyrou and Pavel Buchnevich, that's where the offseason really begins. You decide what to do there. Because those are...
Sorry, buddy, go ahead.
Pavel Buchnevich has 1 year left on his deal. That's an immediate decision. You have to make a choice now, either this offseason or at the deadline, of whether or not he's going to be a part of your future. Frankly, the first choice is, do we extend him? Is that our plan? Do we want to build around Pavel Buchnevich on an $8 million plus per year basis? If you do, just give him the extension, and then we kind of go down this list of our off-season checklist, things that we got to do. If you decide to extend Buchnevich, now you get back to the Jordan Kyrou side of things, where you say to yourself, okay, we've got Buch, he's locked in, we're going to build around him. Is Kyrou still a part of our plan? Do we want both of those guys at $8 million on the wing for 7-8 years? The answer's probably no. And so now you got to decide, okay, we're probably going to trade Jordan Kyrou, figure out what we can get, either spare parts there or 1-for-1. We're trying to improve from him. And then after that, you look to the defensive core and, can I shed salary?
Yeah.
What can I do there? What does that allow me to do, either via trade or free agency, for now or for the future? Those are the places where I begin. Those are the places where I'm looking to improve from this year. I'm not doing anything in net. I think they've got a really good situation in net. It's one of the rare spots on the roster where I feel like they're actually set.
We can talk more about this once we get to the offseason, but I think the real offseason begins when they decide what to do with the head coach.
Fair.
I think if they decide that Drew Bannister's the guy, we're still in that building these players up, and we're still a couple of years away. I think if they go out to the market and find a NHL head coach that they think can win now, that's where it starts to get really interesting if they become a wheeling and dealing team.
Couple of bits of news to pass along. This comes from our Blues insider, Jeremy Rutherford. He writes for The Athletic. Jake Neighbors, according to Bannister, is day-to-day. He's not going to play tomorrow. And Justin Falk is week-to-week. You said, Alex, that he's expected to miss the rest of the season?
Yeah, Bannister said he's week-to-week, which probably means he's out for the regular season. I mean, there's 2 weeks left to go. So if you're week-to-week, I doubt he plays again.
There you go. So that is the latest update injury-wise for the St. Louis Blues. The young guys, I would imagine, are just going to get some more opportunities, especially with Justin Falk. Just put Matt Kessel, should have always been the case, but put him in that spot, see what he's got for the rest of the year. Coming up next, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for Better to Forget It here on 101 ESPN.
Alex Ferrario with you to talk about Classic Air Care. They are the company that I only have work on my HVAC system. They've been doing it since we purchased our home 3 years ago. Even was doing it for our old home that we had when we bought a house in 2016. It's been Classic Air Care ever since. And I'm one of the hundreds, thousands of people that use Classic Air Care. They have been making people comfortable since 1926. And I use them because I trust them. And when it comes to purchasing an HVAC system, which, look, they've taken such great care of me and kept my old units in place, I know I'm going to have to buy one sooner or later. I've even had the conversations with Classic Air Care, but I love them because they're upfront and honest with me. What I absolutely need, what you don't need for the unit, they're making it as easy as possible. They've got financing available. The customer service is incredible. And if you don't believe me, check out the hundreds of reviews that they have up on Google Reviews, a 4.8 rating from Gail. We've been with Classic Air Care for years now. The service is outstanding. Today, one of their technicians, Anthony, performed our annual furnace check and was extremely thorough, even fixed our humidifier. I love Classic Air Care. You will as well. Give them a call today. Tell them Alex Ferrario sent you, or check them out online at classicaircare.com.
Here with a Sports Center update brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling. Cardinals back in action tonight. Game 2 of their 3-game set against the Philadelphia Phillies. Sonny Gray gets to start making his Cardinals debut. Zach Wheeler will be on the mound for the Philadelphia Phillies. Blues will be back in action tomorrow night as well, as they will be taking on the Chicago Blackhawks. We'll have pregame coverage starting at 6 o'clock with Alex Ferrario and Joey Vitae. Then Joey will join Chris Gerber for Puck Drop at 7. The Sports Update is brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling, an independent American Standard heating and air conditioning dealer.
Alex is on one today. Alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. For Bet It or Forget It, you give us a scenario. We'll tell you if we are betting it or forgetting it here on 101 ESPN. Just announced a report, Indiana State forward Robbie Avila. You may better know him as one of his many nicknames, including Larry Nerd, Larry Blurred, Steph Blurry, Rob Wave, or Cream Abdul-Jabbar. Another one, College Jokic.
No, Cream Abdul-Jabbar is the best out of all of them.
He has entered the transfer portal.
Oh, okay, so he's going to be a Billiken.
With a no contact label, which means he knows where he's going. Better forget it. He's going to be here in St. Louis for next season.
Basically, when they announced Josh Schertz taking over, it should have been, and we're also bringing Cream Abdul-Jabbar with us.
He should have done what Dion did when he said, "Oh yeah, my son's coming with me." That's the quarterback. That's the safety.
I'm taking all of these guys with me. He will be known as Goggles to me, though.
Yeah.
Looks good with him.
Cream Abdul-Jabbar is such a good nickname, man. Yeah. We are at a place with sports where there are not enough great nicknames any longer. That's a genuinely excellent nickname.
I'm the king of them, so I dub the Goggles.
Shorshankwitz.
It's Shorshankwo. Come on, man.
That's so bad.
Terrible.
No, it's not. It was trending.
Tyler O'Neill just hit a home run in the Boston Red Sox home opener.
You stole mine.
That is his 6th of the season. He now has, I think, 2 fewer than the Cardinals do as a team. Guys, better to forget it. Tyler O'Neill will hit 35 home runs this season for the first time in his major league career.
Mine was going to be better to forget it. He's an MVP this year, and that's going to fall into the same line. I'm totally betting this one. He finally has a manager that trusts him, gives him an opportunity to spread his wings
and lift.
And Ollie's just, Cardinals probably are telling him to stop the lift because you get hurt all the time.
I'm forgetting. He's not going to stay healthy all year. This is fun.
He's already at 6.
Yeah, I don't care. He's going to miss.
All he needs to do is play like 50 games, and he's got it.
He had this already in spring. Remember, he had a calf issue. He's going to have something come up. It's going to be muscular.
Yeah, but his manager trusts him.
Well, he won't after a while. It's going to be one of those.
53% of the time.
No, listen, guys.
Just deal with it. The Cardinals don't know how to evaluate talent.
No, look.
Jordan Walker's going to look great for the Pirates.
I'm not denying the part. Well, they would never get that kind of talent. I am not denying the part that the Cardinals have a talent evaluation problem. I'm just flat out denying the part that Tyler O'Neill's going to stay healthy for a full 162 because Chex Notes has never done it.
Tyler O'Neill is, to me, Tage Thompson. Like, he was never going to be this in St. Louis.
Stop.
No, I think he can be a 35 home run hitter elsewhere. He was never going to do that here in St. Louis.
That's actually really, it's a decent comparison, but the problem is, like, Tage Thompson was traded so early in his career.
Yeah. No, you're right.
Whereas Tyler O'Neill had every opportunity to do this here. I think it's more similar to, like, Vince Dunn.
Or, Vince Dunn. I feel like he was young, too, though.
Somewhat, but there was at least an extended run here.
Yeah, you're right.
I don't know that there's a great one-for-one comparison. It clearly wasn't going to work here. I do agree with your overall assessment,
I think
Alex.
the same can be said with Flaherty. I think Flaherty might be good for Detroit.
That's the comparison.
And it was never going to work here. Once you put that pressure on an individual and say, I need you to be this, I need you to be our ace, I need you to be our number one bat, I need you to be our number one defenseman, it was never going to work here.
He has scored 13 runs so far on the season.
Listen,
leading Major League
Weird-ish happens in the first month. If you're not going to buy into the Pirates, don't buy into
O'Neill. Weird-ish like the Cardinals losing to the Marlins for their first win of the season.
He's going to hit 35 home runs. He's going to be an MVP candidate this season.
I do too.
And also, we knew this was going to happen. We all said when they traded him, right move, he's going to be an MVP
Which Cardinals fans should not be upset. Like, you cannot be upset that this dude goes and performs because you were so done with him here in St. Louis, which, by the way, I think Dylan Carlson does this too whenever he goes to another team. Better to forget it, guys. Justin Falk has played his last game as a St. Louis Blue.
Forget it. Blues don't make big moves like this.
The Cardinals do, though, right?
That's right.
Tyler O'Neill?
I will.
Good thing we got Ryan Fernandez
I don't
back.
think he's going to want to leave. I think him and Krug want to be here for whatever reason.
If I were to tell,
Hold on. Well, what a backhand to St. Louis that was.
Seriously.
They're not winning. They're part of the reason why the
BK,
team's
tell me
struggling.
how you feel. You glad to be here?
If I were to give you two guys and say, which one do you think is more frustrated about the Blues not being a playoff team that would want to be traded out of Krug and Falk, who do you think it would be?
I don't know, man. Krug seems like he really wants to win.
Looks like he loves St. Louis. Apparently, Falk doesn't.
I think Torrey Krug is pretty happy here. I mean, clearly he didn't want to leave last year. He didn't want to go to Philly.
Yeah.
And honestly, I don't blame him, man.
Yeah.
Seeing John Tortorella and that show.
Seeing that team last year, I don't blame him. If you would ask the same question, I wonder if your mind changes.
Yeah, I'm forgetting it. I don't think they're trading either of them.
I'm forgetting it too. I think Krug would be open to it more, but I think at this point you look at it, you can easily say, hey, Krug works with Matt Kessel. Like, we can make that work. So we can make it work with Torrey Krug. Falk's the one that I look at and go, I don't know how the hell you make it work, but I don't know if you can trade him. That's the problem. So I would forget this.
T-Bone, what do you got for us today?
Guys, bet it or forget it. The Cardinals will finish with a bottom 10 starting rotation ERA, which they currently have.
Yep,
even though it feels better.
Forget it. I think they're going to be middle of the pack this year. I'm not telling you they're going to be great. I think they're going to be middle of the pack when it comes to ERA because their defense is so much better. If you're talking about fielding independent, though, yeah, I think that's bottom 10. Dude, but actual ERA, I think they are middle of the pack.
I just saw this Tyler O'Neill. Yeah, it's off Corbin Burns, and it was
Guys,
a blast.
he was going to get hurt. Relax.
It was a blast, dude.
I would bet this. I think they'll be bottom 10. I think Lynn still has a home run problem, and as we saw against the Marlins, it's not the ballpark.
Gibson has a contact problem.
I think Gibson's going to go through. There's going to be some rough starts for Gibson. I think there's going to be some excellent starts, but a lot of it's going to be just kind of, as the kids say, mid. And then Steven Matz. I think Matz looks awesome, but I don't trust him to be healthy. And I see what their number 6 starter is right now. Zach Thompson, who can't throw like 90 miles an hour. Yeah. So I would say bet this. I think they're going to have a bottom 10 ERA.
A couple of these from the text line, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. We'll do these rapid fire style. Better to forget it. Brendan Donovan is your starting first baseman on opening day of next year.
Forget it.
Bet it.
I think if you're starting somebody at first, it's not named Goldschmidt, it's Burley, but to the point that we just talked about Wynn's defense and how Goldie, quote-unquote, bails him out, you need a really good pick at first baseman, and I don't think they have one on the roster.
I'm forgetting it as well. I don't know who the first baseman will be, though. I don't think it's Donovan. I don't know who it's going to be. Better to forget it. Joe Quenneville will be the next coach of the Blues.
Bet it. You're already seeing the PR tour right now. Look, people might not like it. I'm still a little iffy with it, but if there was one place he could return and not get the same backlash as it would elsewhere, I think it would be St. Louis.
I'm betting it as well.
I'm forgetting it. I think it's a PR nightmare, and I don't think it makes sense for the Blues at this time in their life cycle.
Final thing here. Better to forget it. Sonny Gray goes at least 5 innings, strikes out at least 4, and gives up 2 runs or less tonight. I'm forgetting it. I don't think he gets to 5.
Yeah, I was going to say 65 pitches. I say he doesn't get to. I say maybe 4.
Yeah, maybe 4. Yeah,
I think he looks good.
This.
I don't think that he will end up getting that many.
Agreed.
Boy, if he doesn't, though. Whew.
What, you think the Texans going to overreact to one start?
No, BK's going to come in and be like,
It's all fine. Look at the expected pitch numbers. He was getting unlucky.
The rewind is next. If you guys would listen to a podcast of me and Alex talking about our experiences with fatherhood, go ahead and reach out to us on Twitter. I'm just curious. Is that something that would interest people?
Mustachios and pistachios is what it's going to be called. And we will grow back our mustaches. T-Bone could be a part of it if he could grow one. And we'll talk about kids in life.
At least I know I'm not going to worry about making this one.
T-Bone would be the kids portion of it all.
Yeah, I could give their
T-Bone
perspective.
could give
what
me a
they're
kid's
thinking.
perspective. Potty training, we could get T-Bone's thoughts on it.
It's very recent for him.
This is a new look to BK and
the other day.
Alex is on Twitter at Ferrario101 ESPN. I'm on Twitter
Put a
at
poll
BK
out. You do
Sports
polls
Talk.
all the time. You're a big poll guy. Big into polls. Put it out there. Oh, would you listen to mustachios and pistachios?
I'm voting no.
All right, if you missed anything from today's show, be sure to check it out on the podcast page, 101ESPN.com. The free 101 ESPN app is where you go to find it. It's all presented by
Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers.
And by the way, coming up on Friday morning, the opening drive is going to be broadcasting live for the grand opening of the Rawlings Experience. It's going to be really cool out at the Westport Plaza. Visitors can experience the past, present, and future for everything baseball and softball. That's Friday morning with the opening drive. All of the details right now at 101ESPN.com. It's the debut tonight for Sonny Gray. Cheap tickets available on the secondary market if you'd like to go out there to see it. Alex, what are you expecting tonight out of Sonny Gray? What's your prediction?
I'm expecting that he looks good through 4 innings, but he's not going to go past 4 innings. This is going to have to be an offensive and a bullpen game.
Crap.
I know, that's not good for this Cardinals team. Good thing they didn't use their bullpen last night because the innings eaters that they have on this roster.
Shoot.
I think he's going to look good, though. I think he's going to provide some optimism to people that have been clamoring for a top pitcher of your rotation, but it's not going to be the innings eaters that we're expecting.
3 2/3 innings, 5 strikeouts, gives up 1 earned run. Overall, you feel good about it, and then after that, Zach Thompson, we'll see what happens. That's my overall prediction. T-Bone?
4 or 0 earned runs.
I think it's going to be less than 4, probably 3 1/3, 3 2/3. I think he's going to struggle with command and Christmas with the breaking ball coming back this soon.
Fast Lane's coming up next. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow at 11 a.m. here on BK and Ferrario.